input needed later on. And maybe even Glazer, I mean, there's been such a substantial buff to his damage as well.
I could definitely see that happen. And right here, Premonition on the main screen with the red border is up there, and with MMT with the blue border in the bottom. So you're seeing Premonition, actually both teams just moving it forward. Premonition is pulling, of course, the large mini-boss here, trying to take it down as rapidly as possible. Thankfully, it's not fortified, so they're able to kind of pull everything without much of an issue at all.
Yeah, so pretty typical pull here. Good punt there to make sure that they're out of the Sanguine. We don't want those mobs healed up. Of course, for those at home, that Sanguine does provide damage to the player, stacking with the amount of pools, but also heals all enemies within those pools, so they want to make sure to move them quickly. Pretty typical first big pull here. Now, we did see that Team MMT took it a bit slower. They did not pull Glavion, one of the notorious mini-bosses known in these dungeons to be very, very dangerous. They're pulling her separately just because of how dangerous she can be. Premonition, though, got a pretty substantial lead by being able to cleave her down with everything there. Oh,
you see one death on Malvos from Premonition's side, but it was really cool how they actually moved to the right side of that foyer, pulled all the little Belcher mobs, and they switched over to the left side to go into the middle so that they'd be able to get everything all together. It was a really, really good pull in that they were able to get a lot of mobs quickly together and without much delay at all.
Yeah, I would definitely expect all of the trash here to be cleared prior to the first boss, including all the little Belchers. Pretty typical of teams to see that. Premonition is just kind of on the pull train right now. There's no signs of stopping. I mean, they're not having a breather between any of the packs. They just keep pulling right up to the steps here. Now, of course, some of these mobs are very dangerous, especially some of these Shadow Hunters and the Immolant Furies, of course. They do substantial damage, and the Demon Hunter mobs do transform at 50% health, increasing their damage substantially. Tons of cleaving, blinking around, and of course, that Myrmidon Naga Jack, you know, is very dangerous, needs to be pointed away from the group as it does have a frontal cone silence.
Yeah, extremely dangerous here, and you're seeing really good movement on the part of E-Man, where you're seeing they drag all those mobs into the corner, they drag them there, and then they start dragging them up the stairs as they're making sure that they're getting out of Sanguine and moving towards the next location that they have to do here. It's really impressive.
So Pramo, of course, this is one of the most dangerous packs here with these Fel Infused Fury that we mentioned earlier as well. These do need to be interrupted when they transform, otherwise they will, well, basically one-shot the group. Of course, there's some I-beams that need to be hard interrupted as well. You cannot kick or silence them. They do need to be stunned, punted, disoriented, whatever have you. Now, Premonition, of course, finishing up the last of the trash here, getting ready to move on to the first boss, Tirithon, in just moments. Meanwhile, MMT is taking things just a bit slower and safer. They're only now starting on that final room.
I mean, you're seeing just a very big difference in between, you know, the pull style, how quickly they're getting all the mobs together, the efficiency that you're seeing there. You know, they're waiting for, you know, making sure everybody has their drink, everyone's full mana. They're waiting for a little bit of RP before Tirithon actually gets started here. So, you know, they have that little bit of time. It would have been nice to see Zach like move forward, start any of like the RP and stuff like that just a little bit earlier so they wouldn't have to wait that long. But, you know, just a couple seconds here. It's not too big of a deal.
Of course, so let's chat about this boss for a moment. He does have 3 phases. He will transform, I believe it was 80% into his first Vengeance form, Demon Hunter, after which I believe at around 40% he will transform into the Havoc DPS form. Upon transforming the first time, he will throw his glaives that will then add a kind of fell chain around the room. We see those going out here. Players will need to maneuver around that well in the front of the room to make sure that they're not clotheslined by it, of course. You can blink through it, you can, you know, transcend through it if those appropriate classes are in the group, none of which are in this group. The tank will also take substantial damage during the Dark Strikes, needs to have their active mitigation prepared, otherwise they will allow the boss to get a healing absorb shield. And of course, there's a ton of damage going out on this fight usually, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about just the different transformations really look out for. I mean, we saw as he entered that 40% phase, you know, the hatred that would come out, the little I-beams that would come out is really, you know, it's something that you really, really have to be on your toes for, because we've seen, you know, so many teams just go down from it. And you're seeing, you know, everyone's pretty tightly packed in together, so when he answers that final form, you know, it'll be very big to see everyone kind of spread out a little bit more, give each other some space, so in case that, you know, the laser I-beams and stuff like that are going to be coming out. You know, right here they want to make sure all the Fel Mortars, you know, are being left behind them. And you're actually seeing a death on the part of Sistara. They're getting him up really quick. That's their only battle res that they actually have access to, because they do have a Marksman Hunter. So that's their only battle res that's already gone down really, really early in this fight.
So they do have to be careful here, of course. Once he's transformed into Vengeance, there will be pulsing damage on the group. Tirithon, of course, has thrown his Warglaives. Once he transformed, mysteriously pulled a second pair of Warglaives out of nowhere. Meanwhile, the other ones are still whirling about the room. The hatred coming out now for the I-beam cast. This will be a one-shot mechanic for any player caught in that AoE area. So players very intelligently indeed move out. And you can just tell the amount of damage and how, you know, fragile things are on this fight, because usually we see Zach performing, you know, a much higher level of DPS right now. He's really taking things slow defensively, making sure everyone's topped off, especially with that one battle res that they've already used being down.
Well, it's one thing to kind of look at your cooldown. For example, you have the Paladin Wings, and you have to be very, very careful, you know, with how well you want to be using it, or how aggressively you want to be using it here, because if you wanted to use it at the start of the fight, get some really crazy burst or something like that, then you're at risk later on to not be able to, have the healing needed later. So it's very good to see him use wings near the end of the fight where there is high damage, but there's still the ability for him to deal a lot of damage as well.
Right, you are Premonition, of course, moving over to that Imp Mother. Meanwhile, MMT trying to clean up Tirithon here in the top. They're 50% of the way through. We should be seeing the Havoc transformation in a moment. Premonition having quite a nice impact on those imps down there, making sure that they all die down equally and they don't, of course, absorb the players and AoE grip them in. We're seeing the final transformation here in just a moment. There we are. On MMT side, they'll be working on that boss. Meanwhile, Premonition will be chewing through the rest of this foul Imp Mother to make sure that they can go downstairs and have access to Inquisitor.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing, right before the elevator boss, you're taking down the Fell Mother, making sure all the imps are getting down real quick. And you are going to be seeing, Hatred coming out here really, really soon out of the Tirithon for MMT side. And you're just making sure that they're able to dodge it, making sure that they're able to stay out of range. You're seeing the Hunter, I believe, is going to be baiting it out, or was trying to be out of range to make sure that it was staying out. So you're seeing Premonition, of course, is waiting for the elevator here.
Shocked to not see any avalanche potions coming out right now, actually, because the elevator was favorable for them. It was at the bottom there, so a bit of a misplay there. They just forgot about it, or they just judged the elevator coming out a bit too late. We do have a death over on MMT's side. One of their battle reses do go up right away. They do have one more. Keep in mind they do have two versus Premonition's one. That one will be down for another 8 minutes or so. Of course, Premonition now going down the elevator on the way to Inquisitor Tormentorum. MMT just trying it right now to clean up Tirithon. The last few percent here as the final beam goes out. They should be able to secure that. The Paladin getting so low, though, stabilizes at 11%, so everything's okay. They will be getting Tirithon down in just a moment and moving on to the Imp Mother themselves.
It was very good that their Paladin for MMT was actually running with DC Grand Design. That jump, oof, an extra death going out there, and they're almost getting Tirithon down. Multiple deaths coming out. They just have the tank and the Hunter alive at 0%. There we go. Just getting it down. But it's very, very scary there. I was going to say, it was definitely showing that MMT was, having proper defensive trinkets. You're seeing the Paladin having the Super Grand Design. So when he dropped that low, he had such a large absorb shield out on him to be able to better survive that damage.
Right, so Tirithon, of course, there did see an opening for killing one of the players and jumped at the opportunity. Upstairs here for Premonition, we have now pulled Inquisitor Tormentorum, along with some of the dogs on the side. They do have to be careful because those dogs are rough. Now, they're going to be opening up some of the jails on the side at 70 and 40% on Inquisitor Tormentorum. He will open 2 of 4 random jail cells, 1 at 70, 1 at 40. Of course, as I stated, you will have to deal with these mobs, and some of them are quite a pain in the butt, Jack.
Yeah, you're seeing it was really good that they actually pulled those dogs really early on. And actually, you are having another death by assist.
And they can't get him up.
And they can't get him up. It's continuous trend here going down early. But unfortunately, like you're talking about, they can't get him back up. He's at 65% here, so they still have a long way to go. And depending on which cells that they're going to be breaking open, it's really going to be tough not having your arms warrior there.
Of course, yep, Life Alert indeed not available for Sistara. They will have to take so long to deal with this Inquisitor. Now, as long as they CC interrupt the mobs properly, depending on the jails that pop out, they will have to be a bit luckier with the next jail, making sure it's one of the more simple ones to deal with. This is going to take a while, especially because things are substantially slowed down by his Sap Soul ability, which of course does mean that the next ability that players cast will incur an extra 10-second cooldown on top of it. So you have to make sure to bait properly with either an ability that you're not going to use often, or of course, a dispel. Some tanks can dispel, healers can help dispel someone as well, etc. And lastly, those eyes, those beams that we see from Inquisitor Tormentorum on the side there, if you're not facing those eyes, once the 2-second channel goes off, you will be disoriented.
It's actually pretty scary, the position that Premonition's in right now. We've seen this in the past where you're having multiple people go down. I think it was with Lethal when they were on Halls of Valor, and when they dropped a couple players, when they lost players, did not have battle reses, it just takes such a long time to be able to chew through all these mobs, all the boss health and things like that. And this really gives MMT the perfect opportunity to be caught up.
Yep, so Premonition, luckily we do have one of the easier corners here. We just have to clean up these little shawlings here. The only, downside to this one is once these die, these do put a debuff on players, and they will explode after some seconds. So you have to make sure to spread out with those ads dying on Premonition's side. MMT, in the meantime, Inquisitor has opened their first jail cell. They are opting to do that LOS strat where they wait at the top of the stairs and make sure all of the mobs filter to them.
Yeah, but you're seeing they're trying to get everything in together. They're able to take care of just a large amount of just the AoE damage and burst that they can put out. Get all these mobs down really quickly, get them all stacked up together. Neither group of them has a blood DK, so they're not able to get any like the AoE grips out. So having that ability to just get everything stacked up together, you do have some downtime just to be waiting for everything to travel to you. I mean, they're going to have to get all this stuff down, knock the boss down to the next percentage, I believe it's 40% that you're saying, open up another jail cell, then they have to wait around for everything to come back to them.
So Premonition is now cleaning up Inquisitor. They'll be able to get Sistara back up after that. MMT, you know, they're still behind. I mean, we still have about a 45% differential between these two bosses right now, and 4 deaths on MMT's side, so that's an extra 5 seconds that they'll have to hurry up and try to make up against Premonition. In the meantime, Premonition getting that res up in just a moment on Sistara, after which they will move over to the trash, which then of course opens up access to one of the next 2 bosses. They do it whichever order they want, either Glazer or Ash Golem. Typically Glazer is usually done third.
Yep, typically Glazer's first. So you're seeing there, they're entering, going after the Shavara, I believe it is. You know, getting her down very, very quickly. Thankfully, it's not bolstering, so you don't have to worry about any like the small mobs bolstering the larger one, all the big damage that can come out from that. So doing a very good job getting everything AoE down here. You still have to make sure you want to spread it out if possible, so the small mini boss is not getting healed, of course, by the Sanguine. So a lot of damage coming out. Just to be able to get it all down. And you've seen, again, kiting backwards and trying to spread out as best they can for the Quaking. We've seen a lot of damage, especially on MMT side, a lot of extra damage being taken from this Quaking, where it's not a huge deal right now, but if you're looking at it getting into like later bosses or more tricky trash pulls, that might be enough to just knock people a little bit too low and get them down. And
that Quaking does pulse for 20% of your max HP when you're standing within the circle, and of course multiplied by the amount of players that do overlap those circles. MMT side dealing with the Mogu Quillin side of things. They have 16% left. In the meantime, Premonition will be heading to Ash Golem, it looks like, actually. So they kind of hooked a right turn, heading over to Ash Golem first, which is, I would say, at least for me, pretty atypical, but, you know, it's probably a CD management game that they're playing at this point. Ash Golem, of course, our favorite resident Molten Giant. He's usually encased in this Frost here at the start. You will encase him again very soon into the fight, and during that brittle phase, he will take 25% increased damage for roughly 20 seconds.
Yeah, maybe it's something where, because Sist was down for such a long time, they know that he's going to be able to have his cooldowns up and ready for something, so they'd rather have, you know, them use their cooldowns for Ash Golems, and they're able to just burst them down really quick, like you're talking about in the brittle phase, rather than, you know, using it for Glazer later on.
Of course, Ash Golem, as I did say, is now frozen, and they will indeed let it go for their DPS. They will DPS him down for about these 20 seconds, after which he will shatter and things will heat up as he will start spawning some fire adds on the corner. Everybody getting so low for MMT there, they just overlapped a few of those Quakings. Luckily, no deaths for them. Ash Golem's health going down so fast. He does go back to his molten state now. They'll have to be careful to clean up some of these molten patches that go on the ground jack, as they do a ton of damage, but of course they also empower the little fire mobs that he does spawn.
Yeah, but you're seeing Zach right here. He pops his bubble, he gets on his horse and just cleans everything up, so that you're able to just really reduce a lot of the damage that's going to be going out on the whole group. You know, reducing any kind of like little energies and stuff like that. You only have one of the little ember mobs that's up, and you'll be able to just, you know, target it, dot it up, get it down pretty easily.
Interesting to see that MMT, of course, does go over to Glazer instead, our favorite eyeball boss for the Legion. Ash Golem down to about 38% right now for Premonition. He likely will have another brittle phase coming up momentarily, one of the ads spawned there. Now Glazer, of course, up on top for MMT. We do have to be careful of these bouncing balls that he does. They do bounce off the wall once they go out, and will target the closest target to them. So you can actually redirect them back into the boss, which unfortunately they do a pretty poor job of with 2 of the 4 orbs there. That's just a ton of free damage that you want to be pumping into that boss right now that they're missing out on.
And it's damage that they really, really need, because we've seen that overall their damage, not only their damage, but also their pull strategies haven't really been matching up to Premonition so far. You know, you want to see them taking any kind of advantage they can. You're seeing Premonition, of course, getting that last brittle phase like you're talking about, and, you know, getting them down in short order, really. I mean, having all that extra damage out, especially when you're getting to like execute and stuff like that, and they're already moving on to Glazer, whereas, you know, MMT, they're just entering their first protected phase.
Yep, so they're going to shatter that shield now, of course, once that happens for about, we do have a death over on MMT. I don't know if they have another battle res available to them. They have had 5 deaths. Yeah, okay, he does come up, luckily. During this phase, after the shield is broken, he does take 100% increased damage, so you really want to pummel him and give him that black eye. Afterwards, he's going, I think about a minute later, he will have the second phase, so the goal here, certainly for the teams, is to make sure that they down him prior to another immunity phase. Those just take up so much time. Premonition, in the meantime, getting ready to pull Glazer themselves.
It'll be interesting to see just the cooldowns that were used. I believe we saw Paladin Wings a little bit earlier on MMT side, you know, near the start of the fight, where they're not able to take advantage of like the extra damage right here. So, you know, they're getting them pretty low so far. I don't think that they're going to They might have another protected phase. We'll have to see.
They're just doing such a bad job, MMT, of getting hit by these orbs prior to them hitting the boss. Not only is that a ton of damage for the healer to heal, but it's so much damage lost on Glazer. And at this pace, it looks like they're just going to have another immunity phase. And all that time that they made up by Premonition having to essentially 4-man Inquisitors pretty much lost here. Premonition, in the meantime, moving to Glazer themselves, and they will have their first immunity phase coming up momentarily. Of course, the point of this immunity phase is to make sure that you align the statues at proper angles in order to to redirect and reflect his beam back into his own shield.
Yeah, but you're seeing, again, MMT getting another of these protected phases, whereas Premonition, of course, is just entering their first one. So what I'm going to be looking for here is just, like Paladin Wings is coming up pretty early here, but all the light is being redirected, the shield's going down, Zach's got wings up, a lot of damage can come out. And again, you want to be seeing the positioning here of being able to burn down all the health, and you're seeing, look at that, 4 in a row. All of the little blasts going out from the boss are going right back into him. There's very good positioning there, and making sure, like you're talking about, just getting more damage out.
Yeah, MMT now heading over to Ash Golem. Of course, you want to use any speed up abilities you could possibly use to get over to Ash Golem, such as the Roar from the Bear, some of the play classes equipping Agrimars, all the seconds count. Premonition getting Glazer so low during that 100% increased damage phase. And by the looks of it, they will likely be able to one phase him here and not have to incur another immunity phase, which is just a ton of time saved for them.
I mean, you're seeing, E-Man's already kind of posturing himself to be able to start running and get out of there as quickly as can. Because it looks like they will be able to skip the entire second protected phase, so they're getting really close to it. There we go. And it's going down. So again, very good positioning to be able to get those extra blasts redirected back into the boss. A lot of extra healer damage is being pumped out on Premonition's side compared to MMT. Overall, it's just a very good confident showing.
Of course, Glazer goes down there. His eyes do close, and he looks like he's having a little shut-eye. He's going to come back in later dungeons in the future. Ash Golem being chewed through for MMT up on the main screen right now, taking advantage of that brittle phase, increased damage taken on the boss. They're really going to have to work that boss very hard to make sure that they have any chance of catching up to Premonition. Keep in mind that there's also a 10-second differential due to the deaths that they will have to overcome as well. Premonition, as we alluded to earlier, does indeed stealth by that jailer, which is just an inefficient mob to DPS single-handedly. It just takes so long.
And you were talking about avalanche potions. We did see some avalanche potions going out, but I don't believe Zach had used one. So it was very interesting to see. I don't think that all of them were able to make it down there in time, so some of them were a little bit slow, and I guess, unfortunately, it looks like he wasn't able to hit his avalanche potion, and just another death adding to the counter.
Yep, Zach did have a little tumble over the side there, unfortunately. They're going to incur another 5 seconds there. They do come down in the meantime. Now, of course, they did not have a very... Oh, Zach. Oh, okay. He's back down. He's going down.
2%.
He was going right back up the elevator. Now, of course, in this dark phase downstairs, one of the players will need to grab the light. Typically, it's the tank as they kind of lead the charge down here, that the trash packs, wanting to make sure that you expose the monsters down here that you do want to kill. You cannot target them unless the light is nearby, so they'll start with a small pack of spiders, after which they'll kind of jump down the side of the cliff, which is typical of teams to do, and deal with some larger pulls down there.
You're seeing kind of a scary moment as Zach was trying to get more mana, as he was just trying to, get his feet back under him, of how people were just dropping very low with Quaking. So it was very good to see he was able to kind of jump in, get any kind of extra healing off, get people topped off here, and seeing everything getting stacked up really tightly in. Huge damage coming out, assist right here, 20 million damage right off this rip. Oh my goodness. Whew.
Premonition, of course, will have to deal with some of these Spirit of Vengeance on the side. They have a very large aggro range. They're very easily aggroed by any player nearby, and they're quite annoying to deal with as they do blink around randomly. You cannot just kind of drag them as you typically would with other mobs. So if anybody is in melee range of them that isn't the tank, they will get meleeed and potentially killed. So they have to be very careful not to be there, of course. That Spiderling is sitting in that Sanguine, unfortunately, does come out if it makes sure that they're not healed. And this last Spirit of Vengeance that you see marked with a skull on your screen on Premonition's side is the one that you need to kill in order to unlock the door and then access Cordana, the final boss of the instance.
You're seeing a very good job of them actually being able to pull all the mobs in together. We did see that Spiderling who actually was sitting in Sanguine for just a short amount of time, but they were able to get it back in. And the big thing I see here is just getting the Spirit of Vengeance to where you want them to be, because of course there is that Spirit of Vengeance guarding the door, but another one will also teleport up the more that you move closer to the door. Spirit of Vengeance will just jump into the fight there, making sure that's not in Sanguine, because it's so difficult to move. And Top Cat's proccing his cheat death here, going very low.
Rogue utility. At it again. The cheat death does go down. They won't have that ability for the final fight. This Broodmother has been killed the 3 times over by now. She just keeps sitting in that Sanguine. They did not plan their DPS out very well on those Spirit of Vengeance, so when they did die in their stationary position, the Broodmother was nearby, did heal a ton from that Sanguine, so a bit of time lost there. MMT now only making their way downstairs to this dark, cavernous area of the dungeon.
I mean, you're seeing, like you're talking about it, where, it's so hard to be moving these mobs around, and having something like a grip is so immensely useful so that you're able to just save so much damage, so much time to be able to get all those different mobs down. And while it was very easy for the Spirit of Vengeance to be, getting into a good position so that they wouldn't be sitting into the Sanguine, Broodmother gets sat in the Sanguine and then just keeps healed up so rapidly. It's so hard to deal with.
So of course here we are at the final boss of the dungeon, Cordana Fellsong. She does have multiple phases, some you might call just intermissions. Oh, we do have another death go down for Sister. I think by now their battle res should be up, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, there it is.
It does come up. So that is their only battle res remaining for the rest of this fight. At 75%, she will teleport away and spawn a shadow of herself that then steals the light from the players. However, there's a huge advantage here by having a hunter, as the hunter can flare her out of her position once she goes into the shadows and get her out faster, allowing players to DPS her further. Of course, at 40%, she will then transition to her 40-second immunity phase, where 4 walls will spawn with only a small safe area in them, and players will need to navigate well through those. Otherwise, they could get punted and killed from the punt itself, or also knocked off the edge and die.
Right here, you're seeing Zach, who has the lights. He's running around making sure he's soaking up any of these little dark puddles that are coming out. You have to just stand with it by the light, get all of them evaporated, make sure that they're all dissipated completely. It was a very good, right as you were saying it, you know, it was textbook by Malvos, getting the flare off, making sure that he's getting Cordana revealed again, and then really not losing a beat here.
No, not at all. So Cordana will be going to an immunity phase. In the meantime, MMT working on opening that door in the lower screen. We'll see them in just a moment. Cordana, I mean, you know, we talked time and time again, at this point it's just Premonition's game to lose. They need a wipe in order for MMT to take this game. Raw DPS alone will not save them at this point. We do start the immunity phase here for Cordana. It is important for players to reveal the openings in these walls, which you do get a small sneak preview of when they first spawn, to make sure that you can navigate safely. Of course, flare coming up from the hunter there, that does not work anymore. It used to. It is something that they nerfed. Hunters just had apparently too much utility on this fight, so that's a no-no. And after the 4th wall spawns, we see Cordana's timer going down. She will come down from her immunity phase, and players will pull her to a set corner every time where another ad will spawn that needs to be killed or stunned in order to get rid of an immunity shield.
Yep, and you're seeing, you know, they're probably going to be offered the stun, the very rapid stun, and that's what we saw out of the first ad that she had spawned. Get the stun off, she no longer has that immunity, and then you're able to just cleave both of them down. You're going to, of course, be making sure that E-Man's doing it right here. He's facing towards the interior of the room rather than facing towards the cliffs, that she's not going to be getting kicked off the platform. Very quick dodge there by Malvos and Zach to be getting out of the way of that glaive that was coming out there. And again, you're seeing the kick coming out. E-Man's getting instantly back in, and right here they're just able to burn them both down very rapidly. Zach's just making sure he's sitting in melee, dissipating any of those little extra puddles, and it's very quick, clean run by them overall.
And Cordana just going down, and it looks like Premonition's going to take this one. You know, I wouldn't say really cleanly. They certainly had, I mean, they have 5 deaths on the board, both teams do, but Premonition does take this first game and goes 1-0 in the series against MMT.
Yeah, that's going to be a quick 1-0 from North America's Premonition, and this lines up with, I think, about what we expected coming into this. You know, obviously there's still more series to be played out, but we were really looking at Premonition coming in. They were the #1 seed in North America. They had a very convincing performance last week, and we were looking to see them do good work. But I want to touch on the point you brought up, which is that, yes, they got the win, and you could just tell the DPS differences in just watching how the team...
You know, at least one of them, usually.
Yep, and you're seeing right here, of course, in the red border, Premonition going in for very big pulls. MMT, of course, actually, Premonition is pulling the bears, while MMT is not. MMT, of course, is in the blue border at the bottom. Very big, scary pull here by Premonition.
Lots of animals involved here. Of course, there's cats, owls, and bears. The cats...
Oh my,
indeed. Grizzlies, of course, are one of the most dangerous here for the tank, as they do have a frontal swipe and that huge maddening roar AoE on the teams. But the cats themselves are also very dangerous. They do jump on distant players and can deal a ton of damage. You'll find you can kind of calm them down a bit if you buy them a cappuccino at Starbucks later. But moving on after that, we are moving on to the 2 Hippogriff pack. MMT, again, we already saw Jack, just like last dungeon, from the get-go. They pulled safer. They pulled the 2 cat packs, and now are dealing on the bears themselves, whereas Premonition just pulled everything and cleaved it down together.
Yeah, but you're seeing quick death coming down on Sist by that charging Razor Beak there. You know, it's always just very scary to be watching out for, especially because, like you're saying, it is teaming, so you have another one that you have to be worrying about, another one that you have to be dealing with here. So, you know, I was actually pretty surprised that they had no deaths at all, how cleanly that was for that very scary trash pack with all of the cats, the bears, like I said, the whole zoo was there, and it was just very clean work there. So it's just kind of a little bit of surprise to see something like the Razor Beak, which is a straight up charge. You have to just watch your positioning there. You know, another stuns coming out, just make sure that they're all getting down in short order here.
I do like there that they made the right call and did not use the battle res on just kind of that trash pack that was not too dangerous. Star did release and just kind of run back, so they do still have that trash pack available. In the meantime, we go down to the open area here. It's very dangerous and very easy for some teams to pull some of this accidental trash on the side, which mostly you do want to skip. They're dealing with the final cat pack here, after which they'll proceed onwards towards survive the first boss. They'll have a couple of other trash packs, Glaidalis, of course. MMT still dealing with that Hippogriff pack. That should be going down momentarily. At this point, they're a few seconds behind, but it's probably been almost canceled out by the fact that Premonition does have one death on the board already. MMT still playing it clean. It's paid off for them, but they do have to get going in order to stay in this tournament.
And that's what the thing is, like, if you're taking these extra risks, if you're getting a little death here and there, well, you're killing these mobs way faster. You're going way more rapid through these. So even if you're getting a death here, it's actually not that big of a deal because, yeah, you're adding to the timer, but the time it takes you to AoE down these 2 or 3 trash packs altogether, whereas they're going one at a time. I mean, you're even seeing here, MMT, even though they're taking it slower, this is a pretty simple trash pack that they had. You know, they're still having 1 death coming out.
Right, you are. Premonition indeed does stealth past these 2 bears before Glaidalis himself. Premonition does. I'll expect MMT to be doing the same thing down in their cam in just a moment. Glaidalis pulled almost instantly in just a moment here. They're preparing. Now, of course, this is tyrannical. This boss does hurt. Let's talk a bit about Glaidalis right now. He does have a bear form transformation where he will frontal and punt the tank in front of him and then also do a charge. Anything caught in his path will take massive damage. And most importantly, especially, Jack, for you know, he does have that cat transformation where he will leap the furthest target and apply a grievous bleed to them. That only gets worse until you reach above 90% HP.
Yeah, but you're seeing in short order here, Zach is moving himself so that he is the furthest target away. And you're seeing he's able to kind of jump in here, deal a little bit of damage, drops his consecration, add a little bit of damage because he knows that the cat jump is not happening yet. Then he knows that the cat jump is going to be happening soon. He jumps back out, is able to take the cat jump, get himself topped off again, and then kind of do the same thing over and over again. It's a very clean way of doing it. It's very efficient. You see the second he gets jumped on, gets himself topped off really quick, runs into melee with wings up, adds a bit more damage here. It's a very good flow that's coming out of Zach here.
Right, you are. Jack. MMT, of course, moving on. They do pull Glaidalis themselves. I do very much like what Premonition's doing. We do know that once he does transform in the bear, if he kind of charges into nothing and there's no area for him to actually cover in front of him, he will automatically cancel his bear form and not only keep him closer for all the melee to keep DPSing, but also the tank will not take nearly as much damage. They will also have to be careful of those little Shaw ads that do fall from the sky, as they do leave that kind of nightmare goo on the ground. You certainly don't want to step in that. Does a ton of damage. MMT in the meantime just chiseling through Glaidalis' health. He's already down to 70%. There's a 50% differential between the 2 teams now.
And you're seeing huge damage going out on the Abominations, the Shroudlings, making sure that they're getting down as rapidly as possible to make sure that they have the most surface area that they can so that they're not having to just be running all over the room here. I mean, you're seeing MMT, for example, you know, is not really positioning. They are positioning actually around the rock. They're using the rock just to be able to quickly cancel out that bear form there. But it's also very interesting because they're kind of sitting in the middle of the room, and you're always having to look at the Paladin for MMT, you know, repositioning himself constantly to make sure that he is further behind the Hunter.
It is a rock-solid strat indeed. Premonition does finish off their boss. They start moving on to the next trash pack. We see some new trash monsters here. Of course, the 2 Lashers, the Flowers. Nothing too bad to deal with. They do hit the tank a bit harder than average of some of the other mobs. They do have some AoE on the ground that you want to move out of as well. Of course, the irritating thing here is the Dryad. She does run away frequently, and they do not have a DK or Vengeance Demon Hunter to be able to grip her back into the group, so they'll want to make sure they CC her constantly to have that cleave efficiency still be 100% uptime for them.
Yep, and you're even seeing with these affixes, it's not even that big of a deal to be focused targeting one, you know, having one die a little bit early. You're not having Sanguine, you're not having Bowstring or anything like that, so it makes their life a lot easier so that they are able to really just play it very aggressively. Hunter almost going down there. I believe he was accidentally leaped on, so you're seeing the quick bop coming out from their Paladin to make sure that they're able to get the dot off him as rapidly as possible. And then, of course, they're getting MMT, getting Glaidalis down right as Premonition is posturing themselves for another big pull.
Of course, Premonition does skip that first Keeper pack that we so often see. Keepers, of course, being one of the biggest pain-in-the-butt mobs in this dungeon, as they do have an aura that consistently heals any of these blossoms nearby for 5% HP per second, I believe. Quite a lot to chew through in one of these dungeons. Premonition, typical pull here, pulls a ton of the Flowers, getting ready to deal with this next double Keeper pack. Now, typically, groups do skip this next pack, whether it be Rogue Stealth, which you know they've already used, or Invis Potions. It looks like they're opting for the Invis... Oh, they actually pulled everything. They're dead already. I didn't even see them on the side. or did somebody pull them to the side here?
I believe we're only seeing 4 on the screen right now, and Top Cats is away. So I would assume that he pulled everything away just to get a vanish off, and he'll be joining them in short order.
Because I was sure I didn't see a Keeper in the prior pack.
It would have been way more damage, would have been way more mobs. You know, it's just a lot more that they don't need to be dealing with right now.
So however they have done it, and other different groups have different strategies for doing it, they did manage to get past that 2-keeper pack. Of course, MMT just now skipping the first keeper pack, moving on to what we see in front of the screen, the double keeper pack that we were just mentioning. Of course, on teaming, there are 3 keepers in this. It makes it take so long. MMT pulling those side flowers as well, the blossoms moving over to the house. Now, that aura range from the keepers is actually pretty big, even if they're not in combat at the moment, so they have to be careful not to get them too close. In the meantime, Premonition dealing with the final dwellers, or the gooey guys as we like to refer to them, that are required to be killed, all 5 of them, prior to spawning the second boss, Oakheart, everyone's favorite resident tree boss.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Do you have more prepared for this?
I don't prepare anything for this.
Sure. Of course, going into Oakheart here, you have to really watch out for the crushing grip coming out that will be going out of the tank here. And it's something that you always have to be keeping an eye on. Luckily, you know, these affixes aren't too scary as a healer perspective here, but when you go into something like Grievous, it's really, really scary. Having the Stomp going out, big AoE damage. We saw, you know, last week in the quarterfinals where you had Quaking coming out and the Stomp coming out, dropping people super, super low. So it's definitely it's something you always have to stay on your toes about as a healer, of making sure that you're having the right positioning. I mean, you have a Paladin here, so you're able to quickly just blessing your freedom yourself and just start running through all the routes that are going out.
Yeah, that AoE Stomp, as you said, is indeed very, very dangerous. There we see the crushing grip on the tank. He goes quite low with it, does a ton of damage. In the meantime, we have some troubles over
in America was preparing to run with, right? This was the pick that they had to win. This is the very first map. So, you know, they already right off the bat would be having all kinds of crazy experience here. So to me, and especially when you're having, you know, teaming Volcanic, Tyrannical isn't too crazy from Sanguine, Quaking, right? So right here, it's not too different in the affixes. It's not going to really be changing up how they're pulling here. It really doesn't seem like it was much of the curveball that was really going to be trying to seal the deal. Yep,
so we do see them that they are lucky. There's a patrol here that does patrol up and down the front of the log, and then another pack. Luckily, they did come together when Premonition decided to pull them. E-Man going so low, he already had an LOH used, Jack, while you were talking, because he dipped so low on the pull. This trash can be quite dangerous. There's a lot of casters that could do a ton of spike damage on the tank. In the meantime, distracting the healer with a lot of debuffs that the players need to run out for dropping. So they have to be very careful. They are pulling the next bats as well. After which you'll expect quite typically that the group will skip that final trash pack leading up to Shade of Xavius with the Rogue's mass stealth.
Yeah, but you're seeing the last of the mobs going down here for Premonition, and they're getting the last of the mob count that they really need. So again, it's very, very good planning here. And like we were talking about, there's not much of a difference in how they have to be pulling here, so their game plan really hasn't changed from what the standing game plan was last week. And if they keep on practicing it, which they clearly have shown that they are, you know, they have the mob count, they're prepared to be able to invis. They don't even have to wait for Quaking, you know, which has actually led to E-Man's death in the quarterfinals last week. So it's something that, you know, they're in a very, very strong position here, and now it's going to be all about Xavius and how well they're able to stay topped off and make sure that they have that battle res available if need be.
And of course, because of the teaming, it is a bit trickier to get past these mobs right now. The Rogue's going to have to well distract and sap the correct target while they move over on the left. There we see the sap going out, and of course the distract to the right to make sure the mobs back are turned so they have a smaller detection area in front of them, allowing the players to safely sneak by, which also means that, of course, this is a one-shot deal for Shade. If they do wipe here, they will have to deal with that pack on the way back, which is a bigger time dump, and that would give the huge advantage to MMT, which is just now chewing through the rest of Dressar and itself at 15%.
Yeah, we've seen Shade of Xavius being pulled here. A couple different mechanics to be watching out for, of course, is going to be the Nightmare Bolt that will be going out on players, deals tons and tons of damage, and of course it will leave a little silence field, so another player must be standing in your field to keep you from being silenced / pacified. You have the Feed on the Weak, which will target one player, and you're seeing Zach, who was targeted right there. I believe he had a Deceiver's Grand Design proc to make sure he's staying topped off, so it's a very defensive trinket. So if he drops a little bit too low, he's able to make sure he's staying topped. Then you also have the Growing Paranoia, which is creating an expanding field on one player. If another player steps into your field, you instantly get feared, and is very, very hard to be able to get back into the fight and deal with that really quickly. So
yep. So they do have to be careful here, of course, because they're playing the boss on the side, which is important for the second phase, as we will see a lot of swirlies coming down from the ceiling, and players caught in those swirlies. Oof. He does have the sheet that he didn't proc there. Luckily, it came up just after the trash, too, so they could be dangerous later. But once he does hit 50% here in just a moment, we'll see. He will do a mass AoE on the area. There is a fear that goes out on the tank. Luckily, they managed to heal through that. Well communicated that he will need some support during that. Now, this AoE will go out, and we will start seeing these swirlies dropping from the sky. Each swirl swirly that hits a player, of course, does a ton of damage, but every swirly that hits the boss as well will give him a 5% damage increase, stacking up to 10 times, making some of these almost lethal abilities surely lethal.
And it's very scary to see that he was doing a feed on the weak cast right as other swirlies were dropping nearby. So it was very, very lucky that they were not getting anything on him. It was very lucky positioning that it was not happening when he's, you know, hard casting these abilities. These
groups do tend to typically keep him on the side here because it does decrease the chance of some of these swirlies hitting the boss, and he is such a pain in the butt to move properly because he just does cast so much, and he is often immobile for some of these casts. Of course, Zach doing a great job keeping up with all of this heavy damage on the group, and they've also been quite fortunate with a lot of the Nightmare Bolts hitting E-Man because they can hit the tank as well, as opposed to one of the squishier DPS or healer.
You're seeing, you know, Malvos, for example, getting growing paranoia here. You know, a lot of the mechanics, for example, are just targeting other players. And you're seeing, again, it's going on top cats, but it's not that big of a deal because it's not proccing his cheat death. So twice now it's gone on top cats. It's gone on E-Man at least twice here. So it's going on all these players that are able to really deal with it very well. And you know, we've seen in the past, especially with Hunters, you know, Hunters being its prime target to getting, you know, almost one shot, or in fact, you know, getting one shot by these heavy Nightmare Bolt damage.
Yeah, so we are cleaning up the last % here on Premonition. It looks like they're in a quite solid position, keeping in mind that, of course, they also have 2 deaths less than MMT does. Shade of Xavius does go down here for Premonition, and they're going to take the series with a sweep to nothing.
Yeah, North America over China in this first quarterfinal, 2-0. Again, lining up with what we expected from Premonition. That game, a lot cleaner. That was kind of the game I wanted to see from Premonition, as we look to them as one of the favorites of this entire invitational of the remaining field. So well done to Premonition. For MMT, though, that one was, again, it wasn't as sloppy as I think we saw in week 1.
The way going for Rogue instead.
All right, we're going to hop into Vault of the Wardens, where some of the World of Azeroth, anyway, most vicious criminals are kept, and no doubt will end up, unfortunately, if we keep punting. So, gentlemen, take it away.
Do we have a role play jar? Because I think you'd have to throw some money in there now. Excited to see this double rogue. We haven't seen that in quite some time. I think it was actually the first week that we did see it. But Trekkie, this trash pool can be relatively dangerous pulling up to the mini boss.
Yeah, it's a Sanguine and a Quaking, however. So we saw in the previous series as well, honestly, doing that pull with the mini boss as well, Team Big Pull. Kind of just, actually didn't see it. They did the same pull, actually, and just a little bit faster. They went right, well, honestly, went for the left route, actually.
Yeah, Team Big Pull, though, melting through, honestly needs to catch up at this point. They're doing a pretty clean job, but falling slightly behind. Team Big Pull already up on the stairs, starting to pull. It gets a little bit more dangerous as you do actually get up the stairs here, because you're going to actually have some of those Fel-infused mobs, and we've actually seen teams wipe before on these when they actually do get that metamorphosis going. They have that I-beam. You need to interrupt it. If you don't, it can just spell a full team wipe. The damage that comes out of that, even if it's not tyrannical, is absolutely insane.
Yeah, the Demon Hunters either go into meta form, either go into Vengeance or Havoc, and those Vengeance Demon Hunters you need to interrupt, and the Havoc ones you can't interrupt with normal interrupt styles, so you need a hard CC on that, either be pushback. A grip should work as well. And honestly, right now, actually making up a lot of time here. They were a little bit later on Glaviana, but now they're actually ahead and pulling that last trash pack before the boss.
And Team Big Pull activating that cheat death, though, already on one of their rogues. Now, this is one of those packs that can get a little bit dicey if you don't have the correct interrupts. A nice Gorfiend Scraps, going to get everything grouped up here. That's going to allow the rogues to get some serious damage out. We've actually seen this BM Hunter just doing consistent damage throughout the entirety. Stomp going to be really strong here from that BM, but honestly has caught up at this point, and in a resounding fashion, actually having more percentage up on the board for the trash as they are on the same pack.
Yeah, they're having a little bit of issue with the Sanguine here, healing some of the caster ads are interrupted instantly. Team Big Pull having kiting around in that room right before, meanwhile, honestly is kiting towards the boss, which I really like, because that means that they can enable the boss. They're already on the boss. Instead, Team Big Pull is going to have to send someone over and trigger that RP. So now, honestly, pulling Tirithon and just being a little bit ahead right now. We're having a little bit of the RP already happened for Team Big Pull.
Yeah,
there we go.
Very clearly, though, honestly, starting to take that lead. So maybe we won't see EU finish on top this time around. And we already know that, honestly, with this Warlock can get insane single target damage out. But let's talk about the mechanics that the boss can actually do. Already, we are going to see Tirithon get that metamorphosis going. This will happen throughout the duration of the fight into both Havoc and Vengeance. And that's going to create a whole bunch of things that everyone needs to deal with. One of the big things is the tank needs to be popping their active mitigation at the right time so the boss does not actually get a bubble, and you can already see the chain moving across the map. If anyone gets hit by that, that is going to spell death.
Yeah, when he goes into Vengeance form, he throws it around his glaives, and they're gonna start going around the room. We had a little bit of a difference in HP as well when he actually entered that form, and Team Big Pull a little bit later that happened, and it's actually very fortunate too for them, because when he goes into Vengeance form, he also takes less damage. We're gonna see this phase be a little bit longer than when he goes into Havoc form instead, which will make him do so much more damage and be a lot more lethal.
Yeah, we've already seen too in the last series that we watched, the first series of the day, teams not getting their kicks going the correct way, and that can just be a very easy wipe here, especially on a Tyrannical Keystone.
Right now we see the Vengeance Havoc form actually, and it just does so much pulsing AoE damage here. The healer having a hard time keeping up. There we see Hatred. Needs to make sure that you speed out of that, as the Paladin do end up doing that too. Now he's going to get up to that. That beam is gonna. They need to move the boss a little bit there as well, and they're just having a little bit of issue. They're actually just staying in their rogues, juicing their Cloak of Shadows, and just going through it.
Yeah, weird positioning though all around. We already saw, honestly, with positioning that looked really good earlier on. You see the Warlock actually using his demonic portal to portal right through it, never having to touch it. But it's going to be Nib right now who's just pulling ahead, and Nib has just been the most insane rogue in this tournament. We saw the last when they actually qualified, and now we're going to see it again today. Nib just doing insane damage no matter what the situation is. This is the rogue to beat in this tournament. Honestly, going to be able to take down Tarathian, but Big Pool just slightly behind them, really catching up a lot on the boss, but they have some trash to catch up to as well. As we see, honestly, charge through this impact right now to get to the Imp Mother. Team Big Pool should be able to get Tarathian down.
Yeah, Big Pool had a little bit of issues there as well. They got both of the rogues actually cornered on the wrong side of that chain, and they having Shadow Step, one of them having it on cooldown, have to just run out. Made them lose a couple of very important seconds, and we see the teams are being relatively close. Honestly, a little bit ahead now in Imp Mother, but it's all going to come down to the bosses. As we mentioned before, there's just a ton of bosses doing Tyrannical that is so much health back to back after each other.
And Team Big Pool, I was going to say that they were doing that pull very impressively, but they end up losing 2 of their members when they actually get up to the Imp Mother.
Yeah, that's pretty dangerous for them as well. It's not really very bad trash, but they were so far behind. And now they're being a little bit lucky with honestly having bad luck with this elevator going upwards instead of downwards. So they still haven't killed the Imp Mother though, so the timing of this elevator should be the same. So if they go hurry up and Avalanche Potion, they should be able to get it down there fast enough.
Yeah, elevators being the only RNG that you do have to worry about in Legion. Honestly, with 81% on the board, already pulling Inquisitor, I think that's the big thing to look at. Team Big Pull is lagging in that trash department. Still though, Buffy is going to be down. Honestly, now working on the Inquisitor Trekkie, we see that Sap Soul already going out.
Yeah, Sap Soul as the debuff puts it on everyone in a raid group, and you kind of want to use some ability that isn't very important or doesn't really have a cooldown, or a proccable cooldown rather instead. Team Big Pull now having that Hunter Rest. I'm not sure what caused that delay, but they are all down now, and they should be pulling the boss momentarily.
Yeah, this gets a little bit out of hand here with the Inquisitor. So one thing to notice is, on the side of honestly, they don't have that Blood Death Knight tank. The thing that's really nice about the Blood Death Knight is you can actually run in and he can just grip all of the adds to you, so it's pretty easy to deal with. Sometimes when you see the Guardian Druid, you'll actually see them pull the boss up into the corner and try to line of sight.
Yeah, especially on this pack we're seeing from Ominous 2 with those Mogo, just being able to have those grips there, getting all together. We saw instead 2 times Typhoons come out from Honesty just to get them a little bit more clumped up so that you can have very effective AoE there, especially from that rogue, just being able to cleave them at all times, getting those extra combo points as well. But now, almost dealing with all this trash, they aren't really that, they're a little bit annoying, but they aren't all that dangerous, throwing out those rocks a little bit. As long as you don't get disoriented, this pack isn't all that dangerous, it's just really, really annoying.
And I'm just having a flashback right now. I ran this dungeon with Jack before we actually headed over here. I was playing on my Moonkin and he was playing as a Disc Priest, and he gripped me in and we actually pulled the dogs down, but we're not going to see any simple errors like that coming in from Honestly as they get to this next pack of adds. And having that Moonkin here here going to be great. Can do things like Starfall to deal with the ads very quickly. You need to keep an eye on that eye, though, as well, because if you don't, that will cause that disorient.
Yeah, and those technicians that spawn here, Shadow Moon, they got the orc doors here, and they just need to make sure that they have these ads interrupted as done so they don't get the cast off, because it's going to be very dangerous. Meanwhile, Team Big Pull having the same one as their second door, but their first door was actually Shaw, which is very easy to deal with, because generally there's just a little bit of AoE damage, a little bit of burst damage comes up afterwards. But
I really think probably the Quellens is the most difficult to deal with, if I had to pick one to say, hey, this is definitively the most difficult. But honestly, they already dealt with that. They're dealing with the sap expertly as well, and the Inquisitor will fall down very shortly here. Team Big Pull lagging by about 20%.
Yeah, relatively close still. Honestly, did pull it a little bit faster, but now also Big Pull having 2 deaths. It's going to be interesting to see if we see something we saw in the last series where they go for, was it Ash Golem instead of...
Yeah, so they basically, but they killed the same trash as if they were going to Glazer, and Premonition then, they kill that trash, and then they actually run over, pull Ash Golem first, most likely to just have better CD management, to actually really burst Ash Golem down, then get over to Glazer and just deal with that with no cooldowns, get through that boss, and then when they actually do get to Cordana, waiting for them at the end of the dungeon, all of their cooldowns will be back. We'll have to see if Big Pull are honestly employ a strategy like that. Honestly, still in the driver's seat here, going to be pulling that Shavarin, and we've seen them do weird stuff in the past. Like, this is the type of team where if they pulled the Meteor boss, I wouldn't be that surprised. Like, if they pull that Meteor mini boss, like, they do weird things every now and then, but you can tell that they're very well practiced. It comes back to things that we saw in Cathedral of Eternal Night as well, using the Warlock to just kite that ad around, keep getting that haste buff. So this team already has been a team to innovate quite a lot, but they're going to go with that cookie cutter strategy right now and actually pull Glazer first, and that's what we typically do expect.
Yeah, we're going to be interested to see if they manage to do it in 1 or 2 phases, though, because we saw in the previous series that it buys you so much time. Just like in Neltharian's Lair 2, if you can skip one of those phases when the boss goes immune, it buys you an incredible amount of time. And as we can see on the percentage on all the trash, both teams are basically done now. They just have 2 more bosses to go, a little bit of trash, and then the last boss. Now, they're on Glazer, the big eye boss, and we're soon going to go into the statue phase where you're going to beam him with his own laser, basically, and make him start taking extra damage.
Yeah, it's like one of those mornings when you actually do look in the mirror before you head into work and you realize that you picked a jacket that Blizzard wouldn't let you wear on stream. That'll definitely burst your bubble. Now, Glazer in that I-beam phase, they want to be able to get down this mirror in time, and then it looks like everything else is in place, so it should be shooting right back at him. Bam, he's right out of there now. They want to get that damage going yet again. One of the big things, wow, we almost see Mayode go down there. One of the big things we were talking about, though, Trekkie, is these balls that are actually shooting all about the map. And one of the big things with that is it will deal damage to you and actually split if it hits you as a player, but it also will do a small amount of damage to Glazer himself. The real thing, though, is trying to decide if you actually do want to invest that little bit of damage to target Glazer, get that additional damage onto the board. I personally don't think it's the most important thing to do. I think living is way more important, and making sure that you don't get hit by those balls, because the amount of damage it does is never going to compete with the 1.75 million damage that Nib can pump out, for example.
Yeah, and we see Glazer here now just being a little bit... He should be able to kill it. Yeah, they do kill it before that second phase, so Team Big Pull should be able to pull off the same. We've seen them about the same amount of damage on both the bosses before that, but as you said, it's very dangerous living and moving this boss all the time, so just playing it safe here, making sure that they do hit the boss quite a bit, as you can see with those arcane explosion-like effects happen all the time without actually damaging the players.
Yeah, Team Big Pull doing it expertly here too, somewhat closing the gap. They've caught up a little bit on trash, but having that 99%, you've pretty much overpulled in a sense, because that you definitely have to pull at least the mob in front of the door to actually get to Cordana. If they mess up at all, though, when they are in that dark area, the super spooky area inside Vault of the Wardens, and pull any additional trash, that's just going to add so much time to their board. Now jumping on board with, honestly, you can see that they are on Ash Golem. He's inside of an ice cube, if you will. The main thing to that is he is brittle, so he's going to be taking additional damage while he is inside of this effect, and most likely you're going to see some serious cooldowns get invested to just burn him down quickly. Actually, taking a look at them right now, though, it doesn't look like they're using too many DPS cooldowns. cooldowns here, probably because they actually did pull Glazer first.
It's interesting to see all three druids at exactly the same amount of DPS, basically. We have representation from both a Resto Druid, Balance, and a Guardian Druids doing about the same damage. In honestly's corner though, they don't have that many immunities to soak up all these fires. They do have that one rogue, which as you can see, he actually ended up running over there, but Pump's having to get a few of those stacks, even the Warlock taking some. We saw the Resto Druid take some too, just to make sure that you clean up the room, so that when those fire ads spawn, they do not end up getting empowered and explode because of that fire just creeping onto them.
Yeah, this is one of those fights, though, where it's really just going to be a DPS race. I think it's pretty inexcusable to mess up on mechanics on this one in particular. Like, you just need to be going quickly as possible to try to get to Cordana, but all of a sudden, Team Big Pull just going to pull ahead here, honestly slightly lagging behind. I think the big thing is you don't have those cooldowns coming in from your Moonkin, and all of a sudden just spike damage coming out, and the healer going to go down for, honestly, Battle Res instantly going to come out. Mayode's still going to be low. They need to get him up quickly. Ash Golem again going to be in brittle for them. This is their opportunity to catch up, but he is already out. They do pull slightly ahead in that brittle phase, but Team Big Pull should be able to get one going here as well and just be able to down the boss. Honestly, now at 12%, Team Big Pull at 15%, just slightly behind them. They only need to pull that last baddie right in front of Cordana to be able to swing those gates open and try to complete this dungeon. Team Big Pull looking really strong here, closing this one out in brittle, just absolutely going to melt as honestly runs down to the spooky room.
Yeah, we see literally just a few seconds difference between these teams. We have Big Pull now having the brittle phase and finishing the boss off. Now, Big Pull has 2 times Rogue, so they do have 2 Shrouds as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them skip past, honestly doing the same, but they do have that Warlock who does not have his own immunity or invisibility, so we're having the Shroud go off and just running past there too.
The question is, what are they actually going to use to get past the trash inside of this room? Because they don't really need to be pulling too much here. It's not teaming, so there isn't any crazy math. They just have to get one pull going in front of that door. Team Big Pull, on the other hand, if they mess it, like, this is quaking. This is one of those affixes that can actually make stealthing a little bit trickier. You can actually have mistakes go down here. Honestly, going to jump down and pull this first pack of spiders, this is a really easy one to deal with. Only thing that they really need to worry about is going to be the Sanguine. Team Big Pull's main concern. Oh, did he actually? Okay, gonna actually use a little bit of Cooley there to make sure that he does live. Expect to see Meteor Potion come out at that point. Guess he didn't have it available to him. I was looking over at Team Big Pull there. Honestly, just needs to do this pull right. They want to make sure that they don't pull anything extra here, and Team Big Pull, even with that 99%, they're still going for these spiders. It's very inefficient. If they actually did take advantage of having the 2 rogues, maybe even use an Invispot and only do that one pull, it would have been exactly what they needed to catch up with this. Now, honestly, should be able to pull slightly ahead and pull that boss first. There is a slight amount of RP that they want to get started on as well.
Yeah, honestly, you have to pull this little trash mob in order for the door to open up. So Team Big Pull kind of try to skip as much of that as possible. Honestly, having a little bit of issues with the Warlock not being able to actually stealth through there, so he died and ended up just dressing him back up. Team Big Pull, however, having 2 deaths, 1 death and 1 cheat death proccing, however, on their pull. They didn't seem like this pull went their way at all here.
And this is one of the best teams in the EU, and honestly looks like they're going to be able to just pull ahead.
Big Pull still stuck in combat and having to, I'm not quite sure what happened there, but the mobs are still in combat with them, so they can't just outrun this either. They have to start pulling.
They just didn't even need the percentage. It was so inefficient. They really looked like they were going to be able to pull ahead, especially with the damage that they've been putting out on the bosses. Cordana already going to be pulled for, honestly, this is just their game to throw now. They are so close to actually receiving their loot, going up in the series against one of the best teams in the EU, and Team Big Pull was ahead on trash. They only needed to pull that one mob for the percentage that it gives, and it's more than the 1% that they needed, but it was mainly just to open the door, and Team Big Pull here still actually trying to run back to their corpses. Need to figure it out. It looks like we are actually going to see the Paladin get a mass res going here. We'll have to see if they can all get up, but we should just look at honestly, because it looks like they should be able to close this one out, and the Balanced Druid also is going to have major cooldowns. You can see jumping up on the damage meter, doing about 2 million DPS, a strong opener from the Rogue as well. Trekkie, what mechanics do they need to be keeping an eye on?
So honestly, these needs to deal with just DPSing the boss now down to like 40% before, because now they do have the orb, so they can see. They're gonna try to get rid of these purple zones on the ground. But up till this point, up till 40%, not really much is gonna happen. Those purple pools actually wasn't really big on the side there. They're gonna make sure that they take control over it so that it doesn't grow out of control. Meanwhile, the tank just needs to make sure that he doesn't get punted off, but that charge back from the Druid is just not really have any issues dealing with that as long as you don't stand very, very close to the edge, which you don't really want to do. And now we're going to see almost 40% here. A little bit worried with those pools still on the ground there, but you can kind of delay where you're running during that creeping doom, which is going to come spawning right now, and they're just going to have to run around accordingly here.
And they did a great job with the poopy on the floor as well. You're really seeing them not opting into the throw game as much, but just having it onto their tank. Their tank going to be able to clean up the last spot of it right now, and looking really good here. Just need to make sure they don't get hit by the wall.
Yeah, they have a little bit of a tricky situation here. They have to get all the way over to the corner now, and they should be able to do it right there. That was actually getting really... they got really cornered there, up there, while Team Big Pull is just pulling the boss now and coming... just getting that light back out again.
One of my favorite things about the Warlock from honestly is his use of that Burning Rush. Really is great at using it, not scared to use it as well. A lot of trust in the healer. Like there, you actually see it now too. Sometimes I think that Warler actually has higher uptime on his Burning Rush than his dots. Just staying in it for long periods of time. And now they are going to be back onto Cordana Fellsong, trying to get that last bit of damage needed. Team Big Pull just getting their pull going. I don't think that they've actually hit the intermission yet. They are melting Cordana currently, getting her around to 50% health, waiting to actually see that phase.
Honestly, only having another 10%. Now, the last few percent can get kind of sticky because you have a lot of you need to do a lot of damage. Now she starts spawning those walls again. So if you're not careful, you don't kill it fast enough. There we go. She does go down, and honestly, takes the first game.
You just throw up the dots, and you just get hit by the walls. You just let the dots do the work for you. But please, somebody show me the loot. Honestly, well deserved.
Yeah, well played by the Australia-New Zealand team. You know, people are coming in and saying, well, you know, in the finals, we'll see Raider.io versus Premonition, and Australia-New Zealand saying, well, now hold up, because we're going to come in here and do some work, and taking a win off of a European team. So enjoy.
Trekkie and I actually took a romantic boat ride over here. That's how we got to the MDI, so we are well practiced and ready to commentate this delightful trip down the river.
Yeah, they got to take the scenic route just to see the place, as we haven't quested here enough so far at all.
Oh man, questing here without flying. Oh my goodness, I wish I had a boat myself to actually get through Surmar, but we are going to see, honestly, excelling in RP, and they are zooming on down the Mississippi.
Oh, well, you don't need a boat, you just have the Water Strider.
Actually,
it works as a boat.
I don't have a Water Strider. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. Everyone's just hating me right now. Oh man. All right, we're getting back into this. Team Big Pull now. One of the big things that we do actually see coming out from this initial pull. Oh, we actually get to look. Trekkie, this is all your forte. We're actually going to jump on with the tank first. We're seeing Sefu's going to be the legendary coming out here, and then also the Skull Flyer.
Yeah.
Soul Flyer, sorry.
Yeah, we can see the legendaries a little bit here. We see them skip the first draft. Nothing uncharacteristic at all. Both teams are actually, honestly, seem to be pulling it. They were having some volcanic there, but I'm not quite sure what happened there. We were looking at Big Pull, and especially the new talents. But right now, we're seeing Big Pull just gonna go up here. I really like them going to the left here, getting some extra percentage and going for that route instead. They just going for the sentry right now, though. Honestly, doing just dealing with 2 cats, however, instead, and those can be very dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, those caddies can be very risky. We've seen that plenty of times before. They are not kidding with the damage that they do actually put out. Team Big Pull going for a big pull, though, with those mana worms, bringing them all down. They still have a guard, a construct, and a sentry to go through with this pack. There's just a massive pull coming out from them, and you can actually see their druid deactivating that tower right now.
Yeah, I think this is why we're seeing Team Big Pull shows this map. They knew exactly what they wanted to go for. Honestly, had a little bit slower there. They did pull an double or triple cat pull at the start, because remember, this team teaming, so it has more packs of those, and then just knowing exactly what route to go, everything just dialed down. And Big Pull now being quite a little bit ahead now, pulling this next pack with another extra sentry too, and a sentry on the side too, and then just having to deal with that. I'm going to be interested to see the next pack after that. It's a little bit more dangerous with an extra arcane elemental there, but honestly, not dealing with that pack yet, just dealing with that second sentry.
Yeah, I know we don't have any mages here, but I do want to time travel for just a second and actually go back to that first pull. We didn't get quite the chance to talk about it that we normally do. One of the main reasons that we actually do see groups skip it is because one mob by itself, it's easy to get past with an in-cap, and it's just not an efficient pull. Only having that one mob, it's not worth an overwhelming, resounding amount of percentage towards the dungeon. Buffy having to deal with all these volcanics here as they do get this pull going, but it's just not usually worth pulling it.
Yeah, I love all the volcanics on the hunter too. Here we see 3 again. They just spawn, depending on how many mobs are up there, they spawn them at range from them. So Team Big Pull having to deal with that construct and making sure that they have that one interrupted and CC'd properly. And honestly, now coming to that pull, so they're a full pull ahead now, so we're gonna be interested to see here when they do end up pulling the boss. Remember, it is tyrannical again, so this bosses will be very dangerous and will take quite a bit of time. And we're gonna see both teams having a rogue so they can just poison the vial there so they don't have to deal with the last 25%.
Yeah, and to go back to what you were saying with the volcanic as well, I think the main thing is, especially with teaming, we are going to see a lot of those volcanics coming out, and it's going to be the Warlock. He actually did go for, I was saying I might see a Phantom Singularity here. He did actually go for Sow the Seed, so he's pumping out 3.
This is super interesting here. Team Big Pull choosing to pull the boss and a bunch of trash too. This is a little bit of dangerous trash as they have one of those constructs. They still have it alive at 5%. Just need to make sure that they interrupt that one, have everyone focus that one down, cleaving down the boss. It didn't really benefit them that much, 5% on the boss, but they are basically done with the trash too. So honestly, also on the boss, a little bit ahead now, but they are 1% behind on trash, although Big Pull has a few mobs that they need to kill there. Cheat Death going off on the rogue there.
Big spike there, and then he's going to take it again. Going to go down, Trekkie.
He took the big spike, and then he got the debuff that makes you have to jump as well, otherwise it will be a magic dot on you, and he wasn't able to cloak it, I guess, or he was just late with it, and that proccing Cheat Death and then instantly dying after that. Need to use a combat rest.
Sometimes you have to take a deep breath after that Cheat Death goes off, and that might have cost him those seconds there. Another thing that we do want to note, all of the items for the most part have been taken out of the dungeon that you can use, except for the vial. So we expect to see the vial going off for both of these teams here. That will actually, you'll see the patrol captain run on over near that fountain area, and he'll go take a sip and just die at 25%. We're expecting to see that out both of these teams. I want to jump back on board talking about that volcanic though. It's going to be going on ranged members of the group. And if you actually do see the Warlock being the one who has to take care of that the most, being a very mobile class, can deal with it very well, but BM Hunter is just top-notch at dealing with those volcanics. So that is going to be really strong for Team Big Pull here. Another thing that will aid them on this map pick is their actual team composition.
Yeah, Big Pull being a little bit behind now too, or like a lot behind actually. Choosing to pull the boss and trash. Honestly, now going the conventional route. They're going deeper and deeper into Court of Stars now. The boss, as we said earlier, 25%, it triggers that effect, and he's gonna start eating that vial or drinking that vial and just get poisoned and end up dying. So honestly, now doing the trash book that Team Big Pull used with the boss, and it's gonna be interesting to see because Team Big Pull effectively now just killed the boss, and they are done with the boss and all that trash. So honestly, dealing with that trash now, definitely ended up working in Big Pull's favor, even if it really wasn't that effective in terms of damaging the boss, but having everything up at the same time just bought them a bit of time.
Yeah, now we're actually not even going to see, honestly, use that strategy that was employed by their region, though, of going backwards and actually going closer to the start of the dungeon and moving through to enter this next phase of the dungeon. And Team Big Pull also going to do the more standard strategy that we were more familiar with. But if you are not familiar with Court of Stars, definitely want to point out how this next area of trash actually does work. It's a little bit tricky. You're basically going to be pulling a specific mob to try to get more or less a mini boss out, and then once you take down all the mini bosses, you're actually able to pull the boss, Trekkie.
I like what Big Pull is doing there. Is skipping the first trash with an Inquisitor and a bunch of imps, and just going for, I'm guessing they're going for the Enforcer right away if they are lucky to have it on the left. Meanwhile, honestly doing that general pull, it is isn't fortified, so I'm not sure if they can't. I doubt they're really scared of that pull, but they deemed it not worth their time.
Well, we've talked about it before, Trekkie. On teaming, sometimes if you have like those double Inquisitor pulls and things like that, you try to just skip Inquisitors, and that might be the reason that they went for it. That may have been their strategy going in here, and then they actually get there and they just screech on past it. Now we are going to see that Enforcer with the Inquisitor pull.
Yeah, big pull just dealing with that first Inquisitor, gonna spawn that first mini-boss lieutenant, so to say. They're at the exact same percent on trash percentage too, so big pull now choosing to get a little bit of trash for that mini-boss too, because that mini-boss just really doesn't do anything. She does a very, very small AoE whirlwind kind of effect. They just have to move out a little bit. Tank going a little bit low here, looks a little bit dicey, but they should be able to keep themselves up pretty well. Meanwhile, honestly, just dealing with that Enforcer on the edge of that, trying to line of sight the big AoE Fell Explosion she does.
This is the part of the dungeon that always tends to go south, right? If you're on fortified here, this ends up being a mess. Honestly, being a little bit sloppy here with their pulls, we're actually going to see them lose it 2 DPS. They're going to full wipe.
This is going to be full wipe. They weren't able to. They looked like they mispulled those imps that are kiting around there. I'm not quite sure with what or if they just ran into them, but they had a little bit of issue because they weren't tanking that. They were starting with the Enforcer at the corner and then line of sighting it, but then got one explosion. Everyone got that debuff. It still, even if it's not fortified, it still does a ton of damage, gives that debuff to everyone, and then getting the second explosion too. That is probably the messiest pull we've seen so far from Honesty, and well, it's going to happen sometime.
I would definitely agree. I think this is probably the messiest pull that we've seen out of them in the entire Mythic Dungeon Invitational, and this will give Big Pull an opportunity here to pull ahead. I think the big thing is they entered this one behind a dungeon. This is their map pick, and they're looking flawless with all of their trash pulls. They only have 1 death so far on the board, and already they're getting very close to being able to pull this first boss. And what we were saying before, honestly, actually did go down. Now, this is going to be a big pull from Team Big Pull. Gorfiend's going to pull everything in here. Tree of Life coming out from the healer, trying to keep everybody healthy here. And that Tree of Life is going to be important when they get to the boss as well. And some major damage coming out from the rogues. They both have cheat death, so they should be safe here. And alongside a Tree of Life, they are hanging out in the shade of creation. They should be absolutely fine as they do finally bring down this Enforcer. Now they're going to move on to the Lieutenant. But that is a cooldown on Tyrannical that you really want to use when you get in onto that second boss. Talk about this being scary on Fortified when you're actually dealing with those Enforcers and you have to be breaking line of sight and doing things like that on your way to the Lieutenant, on your path to the boss. But on Tyrannical, this dungeon can be terrifying.
Yeah, Big Pull really living up to the name there. Had a little bit of a shot in, and we saw the healing cooldowns because they weren't able to actually line of sight the big explosion because they just needed that extra DPS instead. So really interesting to see from Team Big Pull here, and we can see the legendaries now for the Rested Druid as well as their talents, but right now they're just dealing with this next Lieutenant, just dealing a little bit of damage. It focuses a player and gives him a damage dealing debuff. It's interesting that you can actually line of sight as well doing the first cast, but it's not really that big of a deal. He goes on the rogue now as well, and it's just a little bit of damage, but honestly now dealing with a bit of trash back here. They're quite a bit behind now with both percentage, and I think they're a full Lieutenant behind too.
I like the fact we are seeing Prydas come out from the healer here for safety, and you could also see in the talents definitely running that Tree of Life ability. That's going to be important for those big pulls, and also when you do get to the tyrannical bosses, definitely when we do get to that final boss as well, honestly trying to catch back up here. We'll have to see if more players start to wear Prydas when they actually do get to this second boss, because that Flame Wreath is terrifying. Like, it's a terrifying boss on Tyrannical, and then it gets even scarier when you actually get to Moandra.
Yeah, that boss is going to do a lot of damage, and it's going to stack up as well. It's very constant damage though, so generally more throughput is a little bit better. Kratos really excels in those encounters where you have a little bit of spike damage now and then instead of like constant damage.
Like then Thicket, for example, it's really strong because you actually do see it on those bolts coming out time and time again. And I really like what we're seeing here coming out. Own Its Intuition and Impeccable Fell Essence just going to be hands down the strongest legendaries that you can really use. Every now and then maybe you'll see the head get used as well, but every now and then actually switching to the other ring, the Archdruid ring, to get Soul of the Forest as well, but specking into Incarnation here, not having too much trash to pull. We're actually going to see Mayode just sticking to those legendaries, those really strong single target damage legendaries, and just keeping that Incarnation. That is one of the really nice things about the Druid legendaries, is being able to swap your ring and then having those big pulls, having Soul of the Forest based off of the ring, and still having that Incarnation when you get to the boss.
Yeah, it's important to know, while we are seeing the legendaries, they are free to swap them however they want between they're in combat with different mobs. So we definitely will see them swap up depending on the bosses, especially like some of the very dangerous ones. Honestly, it's actually two full lieutenants behind now, and Big Pull is just going to get ready to pull the boss. Meanwhile, honestly, chipping away that second enforcer, going to get that second lieutenant, and Big Pull here now pulling Frame Breath.
Yeah, the whole thing with this boss, as well as you're going to see these ads come out, need to make sure that they are dealt with quick damage, but also controlled. Otherwise, they will put out a huge amount of damage to the entire group.
Yeah, those imps are probably going to get Arcane Torment right away, so they get silenced. Actually, they just get stunned and just get destroyed right away. Don't even have time to move. And now the boss also cast a Withering Soul ability. It just kind of needs to be interrupted. You do need to have 2 interrupters on it, though, to be able to get everyone. Otherwise, it gives you debuff on the whole group, and you just have to try to dispel it. And you really don't want to spend any time not healing on this fight, as the boss has a stacking damage aura that goes up and up. Right now we're seeing Team Big Pull take a lot of damage from this effect here, and it's just going to be up to the healer. If it's going to be able to keep up. He has those cooldowns. He did use on that really, really big pull. Should be coming up ready if they aren't already for the healer.
That's the big thing. A late Tree of Life in any of these fights can be a lifesaver for sure. You're seeing just how low that the group is actually falling here. Flame Wreath at about 33%. Honestly, still trying to catch back up in this one. They're just going for a long stroll at this given moment. Finally getting a pull going here, and Team Big Pull should be able to get this one down. And one of the scary things about this dungeon on Tyrannical, I've already alluded to the fact that Flame Wreath and Melandris are both going to be scary bosses, but as you mentioned, Trekkie, it's stacking damage buffs. It's the main thing that goes on with all these fights, is just the further and further you get into the fight, you're going to see more and more damage, and actually seeing Tree of Life coming out a little bit later there in these late phases of the fight. And you could see during that last 15-20% of health, the entire team, even though the damage is going to be higher throughout the entire last portion of that fight, just being able to keep the team healthy is going to be the Resto Druid inside of that very powerful cooldown. But we got a mystery to solve, my friend.
Yeah, we gotta try to find whichever one is the spy actually here. So right now they are looking for all the remongers and trying to find whatever clues they have. They are 5 in total, and we'll see how good they are at actually like looking at boss models.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have any shortcuts here as well. Looking at the Rogue, one of the things that I really do think makes Rogues so particularly strong when they get in these Mythic dungeons is just their spec works perfectly for it. They don't need to sacrifice for any portions of their damage, going into any weird things for survivability as well. It is all inherently there in their kit. And you can also notice that Horn of Valor is going to be there. That is because you can actually use some of the older trinkets, and they are boosted up to that 935 item level. You can see that right there in the gear set. It says gear set 935, artifact set to 965. It's just Rogues excel, especially when you give them trinkets like that. And it looks like they finally have found, and this is one of the longest mystery phases I think we've seen. A lot of the times we actually do see the Demon Hunters, and we see the Paladins, different things like that, that are able to more quickly identify who the culprit is.
Yeah, luckily for Team Big Pull, they are a little bit ahead, so they could spend a little bit extra time making sure they get the right one. If you do get the wrong one, you actually get teleported out, booted out, and can't ask around for another 30 seconds. So honestly, now pulling the second boss, Frame Breath. Meanwhile, Team Big Pull dealing with this little disguised Dreadlord before they get to actually pull Melandris and enjoy that RP there too. But honestly, 60% less more in the boss. Team Big Pull has to wipe for them to be able to make up for this really now.
I mean, even Team Big Pull, if they decide to have a long sleuth phase, if you will, there's no way that their sleuth phase is going to be as long as it takes to get down Flame Wreath on Tyrannical. And looking at, honestly, they also do have some of these options as well to maybe use something like a Tree of Life in these later portions to make sure that everyone stays healthy throughout the duration of the fight. But Team Big Pull going to be able to get down that big old Dreadlord and move on over to Melandris. What are the actual things mechanically that everyone should be taking a look at during this fight track?
The main ability, when you think Melandris, you always think about his slight Maelstrom that does damage, and then he spawns copies of himself. Those also do all the abilities he does. So the longer you get into the fight, the more of those copies you have doing those two. They do spawn after like about a minute and a half or something, so they do end up having a kind of a soft cap, so to say. But there's a bunch of other stuff, and we see here one of the tornadoes is gonna spawn, or it teleports over there, and then a tornado spawns right next to the boss there, and it's just gonna take up a lot of real estate on this small room which you have allocated for you to take him down. He also does like a frontal appears that you just need to move out of. Just don't stand in bad is a generally pretty good idea. And there we see the Slicing Maelstrom does a little bit of damage. That's the first one. And then we're going to see them ramp up more and more, and we're going to see more and more cooldowns to be able to survive those come out later on.
Oh, Zoink's honestly going to be able to solve this one very quick, and suddenly they should be able to get back into this slightly. By no means will they be able to do this without a wipe coming in from Team Big Pull, but they have closed the gap just a little bit here. So they will be able to get themselves started on Melandris a lot quicker than we necessarily thought that they would, but Team Big Pull, it's definitely going to be their game. The ball is in their court, and you can see the real estate gets a little bit sketchy as this fight does ramp up. The Maelstrom Slice is obviously going to increase in damage as well. I think with a Tyrannical Key, we'll actually probably see it hit its peak damage and stay plateaued for quite some time. But we already do know that there is a Resto Druid who has Tree of Life at their disposal. And with how long it took them to actually figure out who the culprit was, who was the Dreadlord hiding out, they may have that cooldown back for maybe the last 30 seconds, 20 seconds of this boss fight. It'd be absolutely incredible. And we are seeing as well some damage coming out from the Resto Druid. So looking really comfortable here. About like 125k coming out. I saw a few rats come out. By no means switching into kitty form to get damage done here, but Big Pull looks very comfortable on Melandris.
Yeah, Big Pull still had a little bit of sketches. They have all the copies up. I believe it's 5 copies at the same time that does those Slice Storm as well. They have another 20% to go. I haven't seen all cooldowns come out. The Hunter used the turn, so there we go, another Slicing Maelstrom. We're probably going to see Tranquility or something big healing cooldown come out there. They might have another one at a very low percentage, but right now it's looking really, really good for Team Big Pull.
Yeah, I don't even think they really need to invest a huge cooldown, but just like that, we are going to see the Hunter go down, and instant BR going to come out as well, and he is just right back into getting those aimed shots out. I think maybe just a Gahanir was actually invested there, but nothing too big. Wild Growth's getting spammed out, Volcanic being dealt with masterfully, but big spike damage going to come out here to the whole raid. I would love to see a cooldown invested, even if it's just for the 3% to make sure that they got it, but please, somebody show me Big Pull's loot, because they are going to look so impressive and tie up this series.
Yeah, well played by Big Pull there, and once again, the story of this series so far, one wipe decides it all. That was another situation where, on that map, it was neck and neck. They looked very convincing. They were both at the same trash clear percentage, both sitting at 69%, and then, you know, unfortunately, honestly, hits that big wipe. And that pretty much decided it right then and there. Yeah,
they had it during an Enforcer too, which means that they did a bunch of damage, invested a lot of damage into the Enforcer, and it looked like an Impact just ran around and just pulled them, and they just couldn't recover from that with the Enforcer being out, couldn't line of sight it, was too much damage, and it ended up costing them a lot, like basically the game. I mean, they might have still had issues, but that was a big deciding factor.
I'm just double checking loot really quick to see if anyone actually got an upgrade from this run, and it looks like nobody got loot. They may have just gotten artifact power, but this is actually really cool. We got to give it up to Blizzard and to production right now, actually finally getting a little bit of insight into how everyone is going to be speccing, into what legendaries they're going to be using. And even though you can be switching gear around throughout the entirety of the dungeon, if you are playing these classes and you take a look, you can kind of get a pretty solid idea of what they're going for, what can concessions they're actually taking to single target damage for their AoE damage, where maybe they are switching up those trinkets. So it's been a lot of fun for me today to actually peer into the souls of our players and see what they are thinking.
We saw the Hunter swapping to Pridas on the last boss too, and we saw that Shield actually doing quite a bit.
Yeah, a lot of money on the line, and also a lot of pride, honestly trying to represent their region, definitely being the best hope, being the #1 seed from their region. Let's see if they can do it against a powerhouse European squad. Trekkie, let's actually dive in, though, to the actual reasons that you would want to bring the Warrior here, because there are a lot.
Well, I want to go into first what we saw from Team Big Pull. They used a speed potion and just skipped that pack with the Shroud too. Meanwhile, honestly needs to deal with these very ineffective effective trash pulls, as they only give 2% each. So Big Pull being a lot ahead here. However, as you mentioned, the Prot Warrior, I believe it's mainly for Medivh, because they are super useful there. They have that spell reflect against the piercing the missiles, and they can also have that intervene damage reduction on all those people all the time. They're honestly choosing to use this Shroud at this point instead, getting through the big adds too on the sides here, just getting up to the nullifier, as Big Pull is killing right now.
Other thing to note, though, is Team Big Pull will actually be able to use an additional stealth as well, having another Shroud of Concealment, but we're actually going to take a peer into this protection tank, because this is one of the most interesting decisions that they have made. We've seen the protection warriors come out before on this particular dungeon, and I think the biggest reason is, of course, going to be, as Trekkie, you alluded to, that spell reflect on Medivh, a lot of utility, and the other spells can be negated with the intervene.
Yeah, the intervene, actually, we're seeing him use the Inspiring Presence instead, which is something that's is really useful for the raid, as it gives you a bunch of leech for the whole group here. However, Team Big Pull is already on the boss, actually, and just like went through it. We're probably going to see them pull it, as they just did that one trash pack, pulling the boss. This boss is not tyrannical. It's going to die really fast, probably during the first evocation phase. So they don't need to worry where they are right now. They will need a very small amount of room to deal with this. And we're going to be able to see if, honestly, it's going to go for the trash, or they're just pulling the boss here, or they're resetting right now. So they're going to go for the slower approach here, killing the other trash, then pulling the boss, killing it where he spawns instead. So they're going to be close to that portal. However, Team Big Pull now, 75%. Should be getting the evocation phase in just about 5 to 10 seconds, and then just gonna destroy it in using all cooldowns, and this fight is going to be very short.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Curator will go into an evocation phase. Once in that evocation phase, going to take an absurd amount of damage. Going to be very similar to what you saw from that Brittle phase that comes out in Ash Golem a little bit earlier in the series, but look, just absolutely going to get chunked on down. No way that he's making it out of this evocation. Not even 50% through the cast, and already deleting about 75% of his health. Now, honestly, getting their pull on, and I think that they may actually be ahead here by just a little bit. If they can, when they actually do hit that evocate phase, they may be able to jump ahead. Honestly, should be kiting towards that door as well. They've already dealt with this trash, so we'll have to see how quickly Team Big Pull can actually get the trash down, because we've already seen once it hits evocate, like that bar is a little bit misleading. The second it hits to evocate, it basically represents 0 health.
Yeah, it's gonna be dead by the end of evocation phase. So right now it's hard to really say, but Team Big Pull dealing with this trash a little bit slowly. We're gonna see Curator go into evocation phase in just a few seconds here. Meanwhile, Team Big Pull has another pack. This is going to be really close. This is going to be basically equal when they actually end up going through that portal, but it looks like it's going to be in favor of Team Big Pull, as Curator just now going to do his evocation phase, and they're going to do another 50%, so it's still definitely in favor of the Team Big Pull quite a bit.
I mean, it's just much closer than you would initially think that it was on that pull. Team Big Pull, though, like you said, is going to be ahead. Not much trash going to be standing in their way here, as they do try to get on over to Medivh, and this is one of the scariest bosses in here for sure. We've already talked about how unforgiving it can be, and that's actually going to be the reason why, honestly, most likely did decide to bring this protection warrior. Curator finally going down for them, as Team Big Pull makes it straight up to the guy who made all of this possible, Medivh.
Yeah, they're gonna make sure that they have all those interrupts on point, and also you can deal with these fire bolts too a little bit effectively by moving if you're at max range, because if you move during that travel time, you will not take the damage, you will not take the debuff. which could otherwise be very dangerous. Seeing, honestly, doing a little bit of trash here, that's very uncommon. I'm not sure if they mispulled it, but otherwise you usually see just laughing at that Moonkin just flapping about, disengaging and then flapping about. But otherwise that trash is generally skipped. There's a few bats later on as well that you see some teams dealing with. Team Big Pull, another 40% here. It's going to be interesting to see which intermission phase they do end up getting. They get Flame Breath first. Here it's just all about keeping those 2 people with Flame Breath alive. Make sure that those do not move out of their Flame Breath and nobody runs into them either.
It's honestly way better for them than if they did get the birds, because with the birds, with the actual composition that they do have, going to be a little bit trickier to deal with. So this is going to be fine. I don't think that they will have a problem here. And already, without that Tyrannical Affix, going to be able to absolutely melt the Shade of Medivh, making it look like an absolute joke. We talk about the boss being very hard, but Team Big Pull looking so prepared for this dungeon in particular. Honestly, right on their back right now, finally getting the pull on Shade of Medivh, but the Guardian's images are going to come out. Now they need to be dealt with by Team Big Pull. Honestly, getting to that 50% area.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how much damage Honestly have. If they're able to skip that second one, we see Flame Breath go out on Honestly's corner as well. Gonna have to deal with those. Team Big Bull having another 8%, if I remember right, before he went to the Guardian image, wasting a lot of, losing a lot of time. It's obviously not their fault, but they're losing a lot of time here, having to deal with these Guardian images. Medivh is going to spawn soon. Meanwhile, Honestly having another 5%. Are they going to be able to kill it before they get it? They actually do end up doing that. That means that is a huge favor in terms of a team, Honestly.
Yeah, and already head on trash as well. We already see some cheeky stuff coming out with the Warlock. We've seen this in the past with banishes and stuff like that coming out onto demons and enslavements as well. And now they are going to fall down to that Mana Devourer room. Honestly, catching up. They just need to try to fall through the hole a little bit faster here. But honestly, with that extra trash percentage, that could mean a lot. We were critiquing a little bit because they did some inefficient pulls, right? But it does not seem to be a problem here at the place that they are at.
No, they do have a little bit. They can kill a few of those bats later on as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see both of these teams skipping the big kind of Draenei-looking mobs right before chess event, as they are relatively inefficient depending on if their percentage would allow them.
The flaps!
Yeah, the
flaps just feel ill, man. It's just so great. It's so great. It's the best glyph in the game.
We saw something very interesting last time we saw Upper Karazhan, though, in the previous weekends, and it's basically if they end up choosing to pull this spider, honestly do end up pulling that spider instead of pulling the boss used all the way into the corner. I believe it. I feel like it's probably an easier strat depending on what immunities you have.
I think they'll probably still go for the corner strat. I think they just wanted to take out. We saw them take out the spider last time too, if I do remember correctly. Last time that they were here, we've seen a lot of the groups actually taking out the spider. Team Big Pull, on the other hand, actually going to be pulling Book.
Yeah, we saw this in an early series too. They pull a Book and as a rat, and they just give a lot of trash percentage here. We're gonna see them die and give about 5 to 6%. There we go, 5% exactly, actually. That is a lot of
neck and neck now.
They don't need to deal with later on.
Yeah. I mean, look at it. Now we have Team Big Pull, and honestly, with the exact same trash percentage, and they're both pulling the boss. Honestly, with just that nose ahead, they're getting that first 10% off the Mana Devourer. Now, the thing to look out for with the Mana Devourer is going to be these spheres that you actually do see get shot off. Not quite as many immunities coming in from this side of Honestly to deal with that.
Yeah, Honestly gonna have a little bit of issue with that. I believe that's why they're not putting it all the way up to that corner, because that requires you to use have those immunities. With him being out in the open, you can kind of move about, take a stack or two, just prevent the boss from reabsorbing these mana balls, basically, because if he does get too high up, he will wipe the raid straight up. And you see the Warlock getting a few there. I believe the Warrior took some with Spell Reflect up, just to not get those stacks, as he does not have that immunity.
Yeah, just to reiterate exactly how it does work, when those balls do come out, they are going to give you a stack, basically, that will allow you to do slightly more damage, but also you will be a little bit more vulnerable, but they need to be dealt with somehow, even if it is with using mitigation to not take a stack, but to get rid of the actual sphere itself, because of the Mana Devourer, like you said, Trekkie, does consume all of them. It will be a team wipe, but honestly, going to be able to get it down just a little bit before Team Big Pull. Team Big Pull probably using slightly more immunities there to deal with it instead of going for extra damage, and you can see a huge spike coming out on the rogue, then another one onto the second rogue, his cheat death going to get procced here, and finally they are going to catch up at the same time, pretty much the same time. Honestly, now just needs to finish their supper, needs to get all of this trash out of the way, and they get on over to Vizdoom. Whoever wins this is going to go on to the semifinals, and it is as close as it can get.
This is actually really funny. This is basically my first experience with explosive ever. Just pulling this whole pack and then just instantly realizing, oh shit, it's explosive. And that does not translate very well to you. They have both explosive and bolstering, so you're not gonna see those super big pulls here. But because those ads will get bolstered, and they're gonna kind of inefficient to kill these as well. You do have the bats, you do have chess event as well, that do end up giving you a bit of percentage too. So right now, Big Pull basically at the same point here, a little bit extra trash that they need to deal with, but as long as they get those explosives down, I don't think we've seen a single explosive go off, luckily, in this series.
Yeah, they're not terribly hard to deal with, especially with the compositions that we are seeing coming out of these groups. It's pretty clean. One of the things is having that Moonkin, you know, that's just going to be 2 globals to be able to take them down nice and easily. You see the healers helping out quite a bit. Actually, in this particular scenario on this trash, we are seeing the Resto Druid just pump damage out throughout that entire pull. Now we are going to move on over to that chess event.
Important note as well, honestly, picking that warrior, partially because Medivh, but if you can actually do that on the very last boss as well, and get that debuff of Fairbrand, or what it's called, on the boss too. And here we see them just skipping trash actually all the way up. Gonna be interested to see if they, I don't remember if they reset or they're gonna try to take them with the chess event. They're having the Warlock actually just straight up go and die. This is what we've seen from them before. Everyone else just invis, the Warlock just running as far as he can, eventually dying, and they just ending up resting him. That's a way of skipping it.
Yeah, they completely use their Warlock. He's a complete Wilfred Fizzlebang for them. They just sacrifice him time and time again. They are actually going to lose their Boomkin as well. I do not think that that was part of their strategy. Usually we do see them sacrificing the Warlock to get by trash, because he's the only one in the group 90% of the time who doesn't have a stealth. A lot of the time they do have that Guardian Druid instead of actually having the Protection Warrior, and then they just, you know, go about resurrecting the Warlock, and there you go, they've managed to skip by all the trash. I think that's going to be an additional 5 seconds on the board that they didn't intend on having, though, with the Moonkin going down. That Moonkin now, as soon as it does get resurrected, going to pop its incarnation and do some big damage here. Starfall going to cleave onto a lot of the chess pieces. The King going to have a protective shield. Once you bring down an ad, it will make the King vulnerable. The shield will come back, though, again, after some time, so you'll need to bring down another ad until it gets to 30% health. Then it will be vulnerable for the duration of the fight. We see Team Big Pull, on the other hand, though, they actually are going to lose their rogue when they open up onto that chess event.
Yeah, he's gonna have to stealth back or invis back, and that should be relatively fine. Something else that we're also seeing is kind of interesting, honestly, playing Alliance. Meanwhile, Big Pull is playing Horde, so we are actually seeing the Horde chess event right here on Olis's corner. Of course, they do exactly the same things, but they have a mean, angry Warlock, Orc as their queen, apparently. But they're dealing with the King now. As you said, once you get down to 30%, the boss just doesn't go immune anymore, so he starts hitting a little bit, so you want to have the tank there. But otherwise, it's just about killing the boss before you end up now having to deal with trash, go back, backtrack a little bit, killing those Felbats. Not sure if they were a little bit unsure with the percentage, or it might as well have been planned too. Meanwhile, they're sending the Resto Druid away, starting the RP, because you're gonna have to wait for that anyway. So I believe from Honest's side, it was very clever actual way to end up using those, taking those percentage down while you would just AFK anyway.
And that could be a big mistake for them, though. I mean, like you said, like they do get some of that RP out of the way, but having to backtrack there, it is a little bit sketchy, especially, it's like so close. It looks like both of them are going to be pulling the boss at the same exact time, and just like that, we have a real close one on our hand as a decider, Trek.
Well, this is looking really close, but remember, as I said, honestly sent their Druid over, starting the RP. They're on the boss right now. Meanwhile, Team Big Pull has to endure another 20-30 seconds of this RP before they can pull the boss. Honestly, definitely a big lead right now, and it's is not a tyrannical boss. This boss should go relatively swiftly here, and they are, as I said, they are using that Prot Warrior as well. They can spell reflect that debuff that the warrior actually got on him right now, instead of having to interrupt it.
Maybe saving it for a little bit later. We are going to see Angry taking a huge amount of damage from that ability, even on this fortified dungeon, but the damage is pouring on in. We are going to see these portals coming out very soon and see everyone hop on over to that first ship.
Yeah, they're face behind, ahead of Team Big Pool right now. Walking into that portal, getting sent to the first ship. It's not really too much to deal with right now. It's a little bit of a step up from what happens on the in the first phase. But right now they want to make sure that they avoid this disintegration beam, and then you should be able to get to the boss. And just make sure that they don't get that disintegration beam right now, because right now they are at the mercy of falling off if they get hit by that one. However, some classes have the shadow stat. The Moonkin obviously has that disengage too, so if they do end up getting sent off, they can get back up there. They have the debuff as well. They need to dispel. Eventually, we're going to see here. Actually, they just pushed the boss there. That I don't think they actually had that debuff even once here. So now they're going to get the boss phase.
Yeah, so there's going to be a debuff that does go out, and it's actually going to make you somewhat explode and shoot out some purple balls of death. And they just absolutely avoid that mechanic here. Now, this is going to be really easy for them to deal with. This third phase ends up most of the time being a lot easier than that second phase. Just going to have these adds, they'll passively cleave them down. They have a Boomkin, they have a Warlock. That's not going to be a problem at all. The main thing that they want to be focusing on is this boss. They should be able to melt it quickly. Some serious spike damage coming out to the whole raid, but they are just seconds away from qualifying, and Team Big Pool into the wings, going to have 2 deaths here coming in. This is all Honestly's, 4% remaining. Vizdoom will fall down, and they will be progressing. Who even cares about the loot? They have just gotten themselves a huge amount of prize money.
Australia New Zealand says, not today, Europe. Go ahead and take it to the semifinals where they will meet Premonition. What a series. You know, we talked about how close that had the potential to be, and it really went the distance. That last game, no wipes, cleanly played. Those deaths at the end from Big
Team MPE starting off on the larger screen in the blue border. Again, going for these very aggressive pulls that we've seen pretty much standard throughout. Free Marcy is in the lower screen with the red border. Again, identical pulls here. Actually, MPE is not pulling Glaidiana yet, but Free Marcy is.
Yeah, we've seen teams get, you know, kind of penalized by that earlier with, I mean, just moving too slow. You know, you got to have big risk, big reward here. Of course, we are back to the Sanguine Quaking Tyrannical Affix set here at the moment. They're just finishing on Glaidiana, notoriously known to be one of the most dangerous mini-boss mobs across all dungeons. She just does such a substantial amount of damage once she transforms. Similar to the rest of Trash, you know, leading up to the first boss, of course, there are a lot of them that metamorphosize into, ooh, we have a huge hit there, taking, having a death. They just used the battle res on that. I don't really think, yeah, I don't really think that was the best call. It is a short run back, and I mean, you know, they do have battle reses to spare, but certainly probably not worth it in the end. We'll see as they move up to the staircase, of course, with the multiple mob pull here along with the Belchers.
Yeah, and you're saying, I mean, like you're talking about, they do have a BM Hunter, whereas Marcy has a Marks Hunter, so they do have an extra battle res to spare. So I guess, you know, they're feeling that confident that they really just want to, they just can't waste any time. They just want to be able to jump on top of it. You're seeing huge damage coming out of the Windwalker Monk, and we saw their talents and their current gear and things like that.
It's really interesting to see as well, Jack, from Free Marcy just kind of walking up the side there, and it's going to be one of those packs. While Team MP, of course, still chewing through their pack at the bottom. So much Sanguine on the floor here. Team Marcy pulling the last set of large pulls prior to engaging Tirithon as well.
Exceptional damage coming out of the Monk here. I was going to say, you know, having that Horn of Valor, that was something that we've seen, I believe it was out of the Rogues in the past, where, you know, having that huge burst of, you know, primary stats of the agility there, you know, just being able to absolutely annihilate these mob packs. And again, Team MPE doing another very large pull just before the first boss here.
So they will be engaging the first boss here. Free Marcy looks like we'll get to it first, meanwhile Team MPE working on that last pack. And I believe they're just finishing up with the last Myrmidon, of course. You want to make sure that is not pointing at the group, as it does cast an AoE Cone Silence. Tirithon, of course, now jumps down. Notice how they move the packs into the room to make sure they start that RP with Tirithon, saves them a bit of time. Free Marcy, of course, getting ready to pull here. They do actually have 52%, so I was mistaken. They did kill that pack that they jumped up the side. They had just pulled it to the side earlier, and that's why we didn't see it. But they did indeed kill all of the trash prior to the first boss, as is typically seen from groups.
Right here, you're seeing Team MPE posturing, getting ready for all the RP to finish. They're also engaging in Tirithon here. So, you know, about 25% health differential at the start here as Tirithon is about to enter his first metamorphosis phase.
Yep, so we do have that first Metaphor phase, of course, going into the Vengeance version of the boss here, after which he will transform into the Havoc version around 40%. We do know that once the first transformation happens, we do see those glaives come down with that clothesline fell chain, wanting to make sure we dodge that out of the way. And of course, needing to deal with these Fell Fury adds that if they're allowed to cast too many times, they will explode for large damage, 10 stacks, making sure we interrupt and cleave those on top of the boss effectively. And Jack, as we do know, these Dark Strikes coming up, the tank does need to have active mitigation up at all times, otherwise the boss will gain a heavy absorb shield. And we're seeing the final transformation coming from Free Marcy momentarily here, where Jack, you're no stranger, there's a ton of damage coming out in a moment.
Yeah, tons and tons of AoE damage is going to be going out on the entire group. And right here, you're seeing Xavius is doing an exceptional job, almost 700k DPS, doing lots and lots of damage to be pushing the boss out of, that tanking phase there into the final phase. So this is where you kind of have to be judging how much you're able to be healing, how much you're able to do damage. And right here, you just need to be putting in tons and tons of healing, get people topped off, get to that comfortable position. Very good job by Xavius avoiding the hatred eye beams right there. So a very, very good position that you're seeing out of here. Very clean in how they're getting everybody together. And of course, I believe you're seeing the Shock Baton out of Xavius' gear. You're seeing that little bit of extra damage that they're having by mixing in trinkets that can be flexible, that can deal a lot of damage too.
Right, you are, Jack. I am not shocked to see that Shock Baton at all. They'll be DPSing Tirithon down for the remaining percent. Meanwhile, Team MP just getting their final transformation there, and of course, twirling around that well in the bottom. Free Marcy should be finishing Tirithon off soon. Of course, a lot of damage pulsing onto the group. The last eye beam goes out. They make sure to spread out well for that quaking, which in combination can do quite a bit of damage. Team MP having a death on their warrior there, immediate battle res. That's 2 down for them now. That is 2 down for them now. And of course, Free Marcy moving over to the Imp area with the Imp Mother. Those Imps and Imp Mother wanting to kill any of the imposters coming into the area.
Ooh, well played. And of course, you're seeing, like you're saying, the second battle res went out, so they only have 1 banked up, ready for them as they're going to be going towards Inquisitor as they have to deal with all the imps. So overall, I mean, Free Marcy's doing a very, very clean pulls. They're doing a very, very good job of making sure that they're having control over what they're pulling. And I mean, we even saw with the Sanguine, we really didn't see a lot of Sanguine healing out of the first half of the trash here.
No, it's definitely quite clean. And this is one nice advantage for Blood DK, well, DKs in general, but especially Blood with their AoE grip, is that they have such great control over a lot of these trash monsters, being able to grip them out of Sanguine pools when you get a big kill, making sure that there's not too much damage going out.
Yep, and you're seeing Free Marcy downing the Imp Mother here and seeing their timing. So it looks like they do have very good favorable timing. They're getting those volcanic potions down, hitting the ground, not taking any kind of extra fall damage, and they're making very, very good time here. It's very clean. That was one thing with Premonition that we were talking about, how they missed the elevator just by a couple seconds here. Having that extra damage there, even though it's not, the Imp Mother's not particularly challenging or anything like that, when you have that little bit extra speed, it gives you, a huge advantage.
And we do see that Free Marcy has indeed pulled Inquisitor, the second boss, along with a couple of the dogs on the side. They have to be careful with those, make sure they interrupt them, and of course move the boss out of that Sanguine pool. The boss healing for even 1 tick of that Sanguine is a substantial amount of health they have to re-DPS through, especially in this tyrannical setting. Team MP will be heading down the elevator. A bit favorable for them too. It's already at the top, but they won't be able to get down as quickly as they would with Avalanche Potions. Of course, Jack, we do know on Tormentorum with some of the mechanics at 70 and 40%, he will summon mobs from 2 of the 4 jail cells that these players will need to DPS down. An advantage, of course, DKs here.
Yep, and you're seeing, of course, so you're saying the advantage there. It's very scary how low they're able to drop with all the quaking and how tightly packed in everybody is. They also did a very similar strat that we'd seen earlier, pulling those dogs, right at the start of the boss, getting them cleaved down early, so you're getting, some mob count, and you're also moving to a position that the boss is not going to be going back to here.
So particularly at this one, we do have that Felguard that is quite irritating to deal with. He will drop aggro on the tank, charge around, and start stunning people. The tank will need to frequently regrip or retaunt him back to make sure they sustain aggro. Meanwhile, the Warlock has to be interrupted because of their seed cast, and in the meantime, the boss is doing continuously his very irritating, as we can see here, Sap Soul cast that will place a debuff on all players, which causes their next ability used to have an increased cooldown. And
that's one thing annoying as a healer is you have to make these decisions of what ability are you casting next, preparing for the Sap Souls, getting as many healing casts or even damage casts off before that Sap Soul goes off, and then you have to find whatever is filler for you. So if you're playing like, for me, Priest, I'm able to use just a purge, instant purge on the boss, get some useless ability that I'm never really using anyway, get a cooldown on that rather than something, very, very vital.
So Free Marcy moving over to their second jail. We will have the Mogu side, I believe, with the Quillen there. Meanwhile, Team MP just working on their first jail at the moment as well. They're also in that Quillen area too. Once again, advantage here because of the grip. It's quite nicely, they can quite nicely pack all the mobs together while maintaining the proper directioning on those tormenting orbs to make sure that they don't get disoriented.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing, the debuffs that they're putting onto you as a flashback from like Mogushan Vaults, where you had to deal with those increasing slows. You ever remember pulling all the trash mobs right as you're going into the instance there and having to AoE them all down as fast as
I
possible.
try to suppress those members, but thank you for reminding me.
I'm glad I didn't have to tank that, the dogfight.
Those were doggone days.
Oh.
Free Marcy finishing up the last of the Mogu there. They will just have to chew through the rest of the boss itself, after which they will likely pull that Shivara with the 4 dogs and move over to what, of course, usually is Glazer, but we did see in the last series, 2 series ago rather, that we did have Ash Golem be killed first prior, probably because of some cooldown planning on the team side.
Yeah, when we were seeing, for example, Premonition's warrior who had died, about half, or not even halfway through the Inquisitor boss, so they, probably had a lot of cooldowns to be able to stocked up. So it'd be very interesting to see if Free Marcy does go immediately to Glazer here, just to be able to make the most out of what the cooldowns they've already taken advantage of.
Now, Team MP is just taking a fair bit of time chewing through Inquisitor here. I mean, they're only now opening their second jail, so their DPS is just kind of not adding up to the effectiveness that Free Marcy had. Free Marcy, as we said, it does move up to that Shivara with the 4 dogs. They do need to be interrupted. A lot of damage going out with that Quake Pulse on the team, having to constantly kite her up and down this little path here to make sure that she does not sit in Sanguine for too long.
Yeah, she was really skirting past the edges of that Sanguine there as you're trying to run her down that little ramp there, get all those little mobs down, and then run her closely back to where you want to be going to. So it's definitely a challenge of positioning because the whole mobs are sitting right at the door there, and you want to make sure that you're able to pull them back. So that way you can move continuously towards the door and back to where you need to be going.
And of course, Free Marcy, we do see here, we just commented on this, they actually are going to Ash Golem first, so we will see them pull our resident Molten Giant Prior, who is of course encased in that ice and will be re-encased later for the Brittle phase. It is always very ice to see this guy.
Well played there. Free Marcy, of course, you're saying is about to engage Ash Golem here. Team MPE, of course, is still chewing through Inquisitor, trying to get it down, and they have just a couple % left over. And you're going to see in the freeze go up, activating the statues. Brittle phase is going to be activated here, and then huge cooldowns are going to be coming up. And you're already seeing really big damage coming out from the healer. Boom is probably going to be spiking up super hard in terms of damage. Retro Fresh, of course, doing tons, just spiking up so rapidly.
Right, sure. So the boss is, of course, taking 25% increased damage here for this 20-second Brittle phase, after which he will re-shatter, heat up the platform, and there will be some fire trash that comes down as well. And of course, if any of that connects with some of the fire pools that go down, they will cast a huge AoE damage on the group. So you want to make sure that you're either eating those pools that will go down, such as the DK pre-AMSing and running through them, we might see it here, or killing the mobs. But of course, the more effective measure is to usually absorb these pools and just keep DPSing the boss.
Look, just like you were calling out, Brath is soaking up all of those fire pools right there really quick with the AMS, and you're even seeing them just moving the boss right towards the embers so that they're able to get some good cleave damage in, rapidly getting it down. So it's very good control here. They're not letting anything linger here. They're not taking any big chances there. They're just making sure they're going right towards it, AoEing it all down, getting the good cleave damage that they can. Retro Fresh immediately is switching targets there to make sure that those mobs are getting down right away.
Yep, I do like the movement pattern of Free Marcy there, of course, dragging the boss over to the embers to make sure that they have effective cleave while not losing anything on Ash Golem himself. Team MP just now downing the Shivara. They will actually be moving on to Glazer first, our resident eyeball boss from the Legion, of course, hanging out there. Interesting fact, of course, his favorite band is the Black Eyed Peas. They will be pulling him momentarily here. The boss's mechanics here is that once he does shoot out those orbs, you do have to dodge them and then bait them, as they will target the closest player once they bounce off the wall. So you can actually bait those back into the boss check. We know how important that is on these damage check bosses.
Yeah, that's what you're going to be looking at right here for MPE, as in the bottom screen right here, as they're moving those little balls back into it. So you're getting 2 hits there, and you're seeing one of them that just kind of skirts past. So overall, they're getting most of the bursts and stuff like that back into the boss. And that's what you want to be seeing, is just how well they're able to position, make sure they're moving back into the boss, adding a little bit of extra damage. And we've seen that time and time again. A little bit of extra boss damage here and there. I mean, especially in the last series of Honestly versus Big Pull, it was just crazy how much a little bit extra boss damage was making a big difference.
So Free Marcy does, of course, wrap up with Ash Golem. I do appreciate, again, their movement pattern there. They drag the boss to the entrance of the platform, making sure they save a couple of seconds. All movement, speed, abilities that could possibly cast here to get over to Glazer will be Team MP, of course, in the immunity phase now. Once this shield shatters, the boss will take 100% increased damage for, I believe, 12 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. So they want to use most of their CDs here. And, of course, we just spoke, Jack, importantly, redirect as many of these orbs back into the boss as possible during that period.
You're seeing MP is doing an exceptional job there of making sure they're doing just that. And Free Marcy is just beginning to engage with Glazer. So that'll be something you're definitely going to be watching for, is if they're going to be doing the exact same thing. Because, you're seeing it they're knocking the boss down a very, very low percentage here, and hopefully MPE will be able to dodge the second protection phase, and they won't even have to worry about it.
That is, of course, the goal. Yes, it does take a long time to deal with that statue phase as the boss does get immunity during it. There's just lost time period waiting for him to rotate his beam with the statues. Team MP should be able to just finish him off. They do have another death go down there. They are now up to 4 deaths, unfortunately. That's another plus 5 seconds on the clock. Luckily, that death... Oh, that was not worth the battle res there. The boss is already at 3% HP. I was actually just about to say how lucky it is that that death happened as the boss was dying anyway, but they do honestly kind of waste that battle res. Free Marcy working on their first immunity phase here on Glazer right now.
Yeah, especially because the checkpoint to get respawn is really not that far away. It's just, you know, right around the corner. You have a warrior, you can be pretty quick. Switch on Agrimars and get back to the boss really, really rapidly. So, I mean, you have to hope that it doesn't bite them later on, because they probably don't have another battle res for like 3 or 4 minutes.
It was honestly pretty equidistant too, because the time they had to travel back to the hall to get to Ash Golem matched the time before they were released at the bottom of the elevator. Nonetheless, Free Marcy making very quick work of Glazer here. He should be going down momentarily while Team MPE is starting on Ash Golem. We will see his first brittle phase in a moment.
Yeah, but you're seeing Free Marcy, of course, is chewing through the last bits of Glazer's health pool here. You're seeing a lot of the different pools coming back really, really quick to deal a lot of damage to the boss.
Glazer going down here for Free Marcy now. Of course, these guys did not see eye to eye with each other, so they will be moving away in just a moment. Going towards the elevator, I do expect that they will skip the jailer, of course. And look, Jack, we gotta chill out with these eye jokes. All right, they're just getting cornier and cornier.
You would know best here. Free Marcy, of course, is dunking on the last boss there, and they're moving on towards the dark phase to go into towards Cordana. We've seen a couple different pulls here to get past this mob right here, the jailer there. So you're seeing the distract going out, getting right past him, then going towards the elevator and getting the jump on, and of course using those volcanic potions. Unfortunately, not able to get all the way down, though.
One element of RNG in this entire expansion, of course, does not work out in their favor. Now, going back down the elevator is Team Free Marcy. Meanwhile, Ash Golem still being dealt with Team MP. It is just usually so effective to skip that jailer. He just has so much health. It's so inefficient to deal with just that solo mob. There's such a huge distance of traveling between where you finish with Ash Golem or Glazer and then getting all the way down to this dark area as well.
Yeah, that, and you're able to just easily deal with other mobs later on. I mean, you're actually seeing Free Marcy has tons and tons of trash percentage here that they really just don't need to be killing any kind of extra jailer, especially one that has so much extra HP here. And as they're posturing for a very, very strong pull, it does look like they're kind of lagging behind.
I think they're in a prime position here to kind of skip the rest of this pack. What happens here, of course, these webs on the ground do damage to you if you go over them. So if you do invis pod or get stealthed by the rogue and you walk over one of those, it will break you out of stealth. And this is why and one of them did, in fact, this is exactly what happened. The rogue will run ahead with the light to make sure you clear that webbing, allowing the players to then stealth or invis pod behind him. They did it fairly cleanly. They pulled one extra mob. I don't think they needed the Brewmother, if I'm not mistaken. That last Spirit of Vengeance would have given them the percent and opened the door as well. Nonetheless, probably not too much time lost there as long as they move out of the Sanguine.
Well, it was good that they had the Brewmother, because they got you just at 99%. So, you know, it was a pretty good move there, that it didn't really matter too much, but it was actually very nice how they were able to skip all those mobs, because they made very, very good time, not even having to really worry about it.
We did see in the last series, of course, Team Big Pull, that did not work out for them when they tried that same skip. So Team Free Marcy here did, of course, execute it properly. Now they will be moving over to the final boss, Cordana, of the dungeon.
Yep, and you're seeing right here, they're making sure they drop the light bulb early. They're picking up the new light, the new flashlight here. Of course, it's going on the healers, pretty par for the course there, so that they're able to take care of any of the dark puddles. They're able to, you know, quickly identify any of the invisible mobs and stuff like that, and quickly reveal Cordana.
Of course, Team MP is just now moving over to the elevator. They will be going down the stairs, down the elevator rather, down the chute. They do still have 11% to make up, so they'll have to pull certainly more than just the last boss. Wrath getting solo right at the beginning of the fight, just gets crushed. Luckily, just easily healed back up to full. Cordana melting. Of course, we do have 2 transition phases, one at 75%, one at 40%. At 75% coming up, she will spawn a shadow ad that will steal the light from players, and Cordana herself will disappear into the shadows. But as we know, Jack, the Hunter is a huge advantage here, as they can flare her out immediately, allowing for increased DPS uptime.
You're seeing Poom doing that immediately, making sure he's getting the flare out. She gets instantly revealed. They're getting the Avatar Shadow down. They're getting the light bulb back. And then again, they're just laying into Cordana there. And you're really seeing, you know, of course, you're like, oh my gosh, Blood Decay healing is just ridiculously amazing. But you're also seeing that it's a bit of trust here, where Xerace knows that he doesn't really have to bother healing the tank there, and you can just prioritize, you know, doing as much damage as you can.
Yeah, certainly a bit of help, and of course the DK can flex with that extra leech from consumption every 45 seconds if they need to. 20% leech for the group. Cordana now getting closer and closer to 40% in the meantime. Team MP still dealing with the downstairs area. They seem to be doing all right. A bit low health here and there, but no extra deaths, no wipes or anything like that. They're moving to the final mob, the final Spirit of Vengeance, prior to opening the door.
Yeah, but you're seeing, the Team MPE did not actually opt to do that similar skip. They needed that extra trash percentage. It might be like a little bit over percent, but it is definitely just showing the interest in different regions. You're seeing the different strategies they can kind of be coming up with and how you're most easily optimizing how you're going to be chewing through all these different mobs.
Right, you are, Jack. We do start our 40-second immunity phase now on Cordana, Creeping Doom, where she will spawn these 4 walls. Players will have to maneuver around through the gaps in the wall to make sure that they are not hit by the wall. That not only does a ton of damage, but does knock you back and can knock you off the platform to your death. That can only be revealed with the light now, and Flare does not work anymore. So they're going through the 3rd wall here. 4th wall spawns amiably, and it also puts them in a position with that gap over there by the statue in the bottom right corner of your screen. That is always where the first trash monster spawns once the boss comes out of this phase, so they can easily stun it and make sure they can efficiently cleave the pair together.
And right there you were seeing Xavius just immediately throws the light to that corner because they know that's exactly where it's going to be. That's the only place that they really have to worry about. The extra avatar is going to come out, instantly gets stunned by the warrior there, and then takes off the immunity debuff from Cordana. Cleave goes down. You just see that death from above just instantly strike her down.
And they do spread out, of course, well for the Quaking. Cordana is just melting at this point. She should be going down in a moment for Free Marcy, who would then take the prize, because not only is Team MP behind on time, but they're also 4 deaths behind, which is another 20-second differential they would have to make up. The Glaive does go out there in the meantime for Free Marcy and another good dodge, and Cordana just melting down. This should be Free Marcy's free win here. They will be taking this first game 1-0.
Yeah, big win for Free Marcy and some big wins for the Pun Jar. Sluddy.
Do we raffle that at the end of the week?
No. If anything, I got to tell you, even the jar wants you to stop. It's getting full. So we're down to our last $1. So you have one more pun.
My phone is gone already.
Yeah. Well, just please be considerate.
So beautiful.
Say you too can win the autographed penalty jar from the Mythic Dungeon Invitational.
Penalty.
But just please. Well, I think actually.
Uh-oh.
I said penalty jar.
So we're out of puns now. We have no more money.
We also can't go to the bar tonight.
Ooh, unlucky. But
going down the water slide, of course, we have Free Marcy in the top with the red border here. Also enjoying a slippery water slide is Team MP at the bottom with the blue border. So
the first thing to see, of course, Jack, as we just discussed, is the very first pull here. We do have teaming, so there's going to be, we'll see just how big they go. Free Marcy's running right through this. We'll see if they have a little pause or not. With teaming, though, we are going to have 2 of those Hulks in the back. Those are very, very dangerous mobs. They do have a punt forward on the tank, and then a frontal cone. It looks like they're pulling everything here, so they're going to have to control them really well after those fracture punts right here, right now. Seeing if those... Okay, good. So excellent. They do need to interrupt those. It's a ton of damage on the tank, even if it's just on the tank, making sure it doesn't clip some of the melee too.
Huge damage coming out of both sides here, and like I said, this is what we're talking about. We want to see these huge pulls because this is something that we have to do, and this is something we've constantly been seeing out of some of the best teams, regardless of the region, that regardless of the affix, regardless of what's going on, they were making these really big pulls and they were making it work. So it's very good to see both teams, starting off with this and really taking no prisoners.
Yeah, pretty neck and neck are both teams at the moment. Of course, there is a lurker worm that has spawned because those do burrow and pop up in a random location at a player. So by being out of position, one of the range there on Free Marcy has spawned the worm in the back. They do have to backtrack there and kill. They don't have the DK for that grip. In the meantime, Team MP here, we can see some of the Arms Warriors break down there with the gear and the talents as Team MP is cleaning up some of this last trash, getting ready to move down to Rockmora.
Yeah, no surprise to see the Warglaives coming out for the warrior there. I mean, you're seeing, we've seen it out of some healers too. This is such a flexible, useful trinket that whenever you're having these huge mob pulls, taking advantage of the Warglaives is just really, really going to be super effective here.
For sure. So we do see that Team MP has, of course, started the RP prior to engaging Rockmora. Rockmora himself, of course, does have a couple abilities. The main one we do need to watch out for are these skitters that he spawns based on damage taken. The more that are active during his AoE smash, the more damage it will do, Jack. You know how much damage that could do to the group.
It's very, very scary, and you're seeing a very good job by the tank getting all these skitters right into his face, making sure there's very good room for cleave. The warrior and the demon hunter are able to lay into it super, super hard here. So when you're seeing this huge smash that's going to come out for Team MPE here, people dropping so low because they had those skitters out. and people almost dying there. It was very, very scary. But you're also seeing, you know, the rest of Druid for Team MPE doing a lot of damage, so they weren't really having any kind of pre-hots or anything like that that was really going to be bringing them back there.
You're almost guaranteed to always have one skitter that spawns last moment before he does his AoE, so you have to bank on the fact that there's always going to be one, but having two could prove to be lethal for some groups. Here's another shatter coming up. They do have 3 of those out right now.
Oh,
Warrior
so
almost going down right now. They have to get those down a bit better while rotating the boss around the room, making sure they're avoiding those poison puddles on the ground to make sure that the melee DPS have access not only to the boss, who has a massive hitbox, but also the skitters that will innately be drawn to the tank.
Yeah, and you're seeing it taking forever for them to get those skitters down. They have 3 skitters active right now. One is about to drop off, but still having 2 skitters up right now. They're very, very high health. Actually, they did get one down just in time. Right before it. So, but having that extra one up, you know, would have just destroyed them here. So it's pretty sloppy so far, and you're not really seeing as much cleave as you really would have hoped.
Yep, Team MP, sorry, Free Marcy rather, of course, not behind. We do have Zerace go down and get Zeraced from the screen right now. Rezzed immediately up. One of their battle reses does go down as a result, plus an extra 5 seconds on the clock. Both teams almost neck and neck. Rockmore about 8-9% behind for Free Marcy, plus that death on top of it. We're going to have an almost probably a wipe here for Team MP. It looks like one of those shatters was just too much to handle. I don't know if they want to keep going with just a tank and a healer combo. Eventually those skitters will mount up to allowing them to wipe. I think it's more effective. Okay, they do get a res up. I don't know, at this point it might be more effective to just go again. They do get the second res up right before the shatter, and the hunter goes down again.
They had the battle res there on their hunter, and then they had the other DPS just sitting on the battle res and not using it yet. So now the warrior's going up. So it looks like there was some kind of miscommunication where the hunter's like, oh yeah, I'll get up immediately, and he didn't even have a personal that ready to handle that.
Yeah, that was definitely poorly communicated. The warrior's standing in some of the poison there, going down quite low. Luckily it does not go down again for Team Epic. But yeah, Jack, that was just poorly communicated. I mean, you know how much damage they did. You know they got one shot a few times already, and the hunter comes up without his own personal. He doesn't have turtle. I don't know if he called for a cooldown, but he just goes down. I mean, you can't sit at 60% on one of those smashes and expect to live.
Yeah, but now you're having a disaster situation by MPE. They're actually having the tank going down. This will be a full wipe on Team MPE's part, and that's just something that you can't have. I mean, it already was going to be a bad situation if you're going to try to tough it out with just a tank and a healer and taking forever to down a boss. But now they have to get back there. They have to start all over again.
Right, you are. Today we spell wipe MPE as they come down. They will have to run all the way back to Rockmora. Not only, you know, everything you just said, Jack, plus they wasted 2 battle reses trying to salvage the situation that didn't work out at all. Free Marcy having a massive lead now going down the waterfall. They will have this huge open area here to deal with. Of course, a lot of groups we do see either do a mass pull here or they opt to skip a lot of the starter pack area, but therefore will have to make some percentage later on.
It's kind of disturbing to see, you know, Team MPE's wipe, because the whole focal point, the whole issue with their wipe to begin with was just the fact that they were not cleaving as well as they could have. They were not getting those skitters down very rapidly. They were not switching targets well. They were trying to worry too much about, you know, their little individual cleave and things like that. So it was very disappointing to see there. And you're seeing another death on the part of Team MPE.
I think he might have hit a rock on the way down. I mean, with Rockmore, this boss, they are certainly between a rock and a hard place. Free Marcy now pulling up to what is the right before the dreaded Pelter pack. We do know on teaming that there are 4 Pelters rather than the 2. We'll see if they opt to skip this pack in just a moment.
I think Team MPE, the DK killed their Demon Hunter because they had Path of Frost on, and he landed on the
That's something I do on live server.
Yeah. So it's very, very rough communication. Of course, you know, Free Marcy is having a very, very huge lead here as they're getting more of these larger mobs down. They're moving towards the teeming Pelters, the very scary and annoying mobs. But we've constantly seen, I mean, Free Marcy especially, how cleanly they've actually been able to deal with this. Having their Guardian Druid able to run in, get a focus on all the mobs, and then start kiting them out as they start jumping out. But you're seeing here the Ursula's Vortex getting all of the Pelters back in when they need to, getting them super, super low. So it's very well played.
Yep, they just pop a bunch of CDs there, make sure they kill that horrible pack. Now we will, of course, have 2 more Hulks to deal with, one here and then one just up the ramp prior to the second boss, Ulrog. Once again, Jack, we discussed these Hulks are very, very dangerous, but so are the Shapers that are now with them, one of the new trash monsters that we did not see prior to the first boss. They do constantly cast stone bolts on various targets on the party, so it is important to have good communication and a stun or interrupt rotation on the Shaper to make sure that we don't have too much damage spilling out. In the meantime, Team MP, of course, in the bottom right is still working on Rockmora. They're just halfway through, but I mean, things are looking pretty rocky for them right now.
Indeed they are. I mean, you've seen Free Marcy did a very, very excellent job of focusing down. Team MPE is dropping very, very low here, but Free Marcy was doing a very good job of making sure they were getting those Shapers down. So right here is just making sure that Team MPE is able to get the focus and and being able to take down the pelters that they need to, because I mean, we're about to have another, just the AoE burst there, and so we have a little bit of time to be getting these 2 pelter mobs down very quickly before, of course, the next smash is going to be coming out here. So it's very, very imperative for them to get that much damage on. And again, 3 going down here for MPE, and it's going to be looking like it's going to be another wipe going out on them part.
I mean, they certainly don't have the battle reses. We know that for sure. They've already used 2 of them. I think they have 1 more in the
For the BM Hunter.
Yeah, okay, the tank does go down. Another full wipe for Team MPE. They're really going to have to kind of get themselves together and do a proper pull on the boss and down him. At this point, they're just got to be hoping that Team Marcy is going to be wiping. But I mean, we know that these players are probably previewing on the second monitor or what have you at home, making sure, keeping an eye on the other team. Free Marcy knows how ahead they are at this point, so they can opt to take it even a bit safer and probably win this match and not have to risk any wipe whatsoever.
And that's the thing with Free Marcy, is that they have this, kind of clarity. They're saying, okay, well, let's just play our game. Let's play efficiently. We're not worried about having this maximizing their time. You're not playing one of the absolute top dogs here. I mean, you're having a team that just wiped up against you, and this is something where you really just can play conservatively. You can play safe, and I mean, at MPE's part, we just want to make sure that they're not using Path of Frost to kill their members again.
Well, I mean, maybe they want to, but you really got to wonder. I mean, this is Team MPE's map pick. They certainly must know what happens with that boss and how much damage is amplified on a 17 Tyrannical by those skitters, and they're just doing... It's not like you don't have the damage with a warrior, with a Havoc Demon, or with anyone there to kill those skitters. They're just being lazy about it.
Yeah, but and it was even the thing where we have the time to practice. Like, the maps are known, the setup's known, the affixes are known. These things, it comes down to practice, making sure you're coordinating with your group. And we kind of saw there with MPE where their warrior was starting to focus on the skitters, and then it didn't really look like the Havoc or the Hunter really were helping out too much with it. So, that was one thing, is just the miscommunication that's going on and the lack of focus that really is coming in on their part. It's really hurting them.
And you can tell, typically in a lot of the Notharian's Lair in prior series, prior weeks, we did see that this room was usually a huge pull by a lot of teams. Get everyone in, Guardian, huge damage, and you just saw they took it 1 pack at a time right now for Free Marcy. They must be in a very comfortable position right now, and they're pulling it safe and playing it safe. Of course, we have now started on Ularog. His breath gets hit really hard with the Sunder there. Ularog, the second boss, which does have a big nature tank damage spike, and of course has this hand ability, is a very, very handsy boss. You want to make sure you move out of the way with that, otherwise it will do a ton of damage, and at 100 energy, he will go downstairs for everyone's favorite Ball Under the Cup game.
My favorite totem.
I hate it.
Favorite totem game. So he will spawn a number of different totems around him, and then of course he will have the center totem. What you're going to be looking for here is tracking that center totem, because that is where he's going to be hiding behind here. And of course you're having another death going out on the part of Team MPE. So it just still kind of compounding upon itself as Free Marcy is going after these totems.
I mean, the Hunter, has to be the most convincing case of feigned death I've ever seen in my entire playing career of World of Warcraft. He's just, the boss is fooled, I'm fooled, he's just lying on the floor eating some dirt. In the meantime, Free Marcy, of course, does guess the right idol, DPS it down. I do like how the tank is moving here, of course. Brath is doing an excellent job of rotating the boss by 90 degrees once he does spawn those idols in the first phase to make sure that everything's nice and stacked for cleaving.
Yeah, but you're seeing, again, Team MPE, I mean, if they didn't have DPS problems before with getting the skitters down in time, I mean, they're definitely having it now. They're having another death happening on the warrior's part. And you're even seeing the rest of Druid just trying to, go into bear form, pop any kind of personals, keep himself alive. And again, it just looks like it's going to be another wipe. And it definitely is just kind of shocking to see that this is their pick. This is something that they've had time to practice on for the tournament realms, and they're just failing at it.
The big problem is not only were they mishandling the skitters with all of their DPS alive, now they're missing 2 of them. They're just going to fall completely behind on skitters, and eventually they will just get one shot. I mean, that Havoc Demon Hunter can only survive so long. Free Marcy, of course, going over to their second phase of Ball Under the Cup here, or Ball Under the Idol, I suppose, in this case. But based on their damage, I think they're actually going to get a third, quite sure, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it may just be that they're waiting for cooldowns to come up or something along those lines. I mean, again, they're chasing after the idol here. But you might be right, where they might actually be losing out on, they might end up having to go to a different, to a third phase here. But even if they do, it's not even something that's that big of a deal. I mean, hopefully it'll be sort of a wake-up call to make sure that they're, not being lazy, not being, not getting complacent here, because, it's not over until you've crossed that finish line there. So it's very important to kind of lay on that extra damage when you can, get that kind of cleave damage here. It does look like overall the DPS is fairly low, so it might just be something where cooldowns are coming back up, or as the boss is, of course, getting more and more towards execute range, they'll pick it up.
It is possible that some of the members of Free Marcy have now gone to their refrigerator to get a snack. Of course, we do see the healer going down for Team MP at the moment as well. the Blood DK can stay alive through all of this. I mean, their self-healing is incredible, but to have to solo DPS the boss at 30% health on a 7 Tyrannical will take a phenomenal amount of time. Certainly more efficient for them to just wipe, come back and pull the boss again, unless this Havoc can manage to stay alive the whole time, which so far they're doing at the moment. They do have a bit of support from the consumption from the Blood DK there. Free Marcy, of course, trying to clean up Ularog here prior to having another down phase. Unfortunately, they do not manage to do that. He does go down at 10% as we predicted for the final guessing phase here.
Yeah, but it looks like, you know, getting that extra snack and stuff like that, getting that extra drink, you know, it definitely hurt them. So, I mean, it's something that kind of check themselves as, you know, they're looking to go forward, hopefully going forward here, you know, making sure that they're going to be picking that up, because when they're going against these higher tier teams, you know, they're not going to be able to get away with having that low of damage.
No, not at all. Free Marcy, I would assume, guesses the right idol. Of course, I knew it was that one all along. Just wanted to make sure everyone else at home was guessing. I didn't want to give you a hint. Ularog should be going down here momentarily for Free Marcy, after which they will, of course, be moving to that 5-pack after the second boss. That is usually a 3-pack. It looks like the Havoc Demon Hunter has finally gone down for Team MPE. The Blood DK standing tall, standing his ground. Not sure at this point exactly what their communication is. It's probably very violent and angry, but I would assume the DK at this point is perhaps just going to try to solo the boss. Something DK should easily be able to handle. It's just going to take a ton of time.
Yeah, and time is something that they don't have right now. I mean, even though they're able to take advantage of, you know, just AoE-based trinkets, it looks like they might be having the shock baton that they're taking advantage of here. You know, it definitely is just, this is something that is still is kind of baffling to me, where they're, you know, wiping on the boss that they picked, the very first boss that they picked, whereas Free Marcy's having these large pulls, they're having these efficient pulls, and they're able to show that, you know, they're able to get these mobs down when they want them to.
I have just received word that there are police waiting outside for Rockmora due to this murder on the screen that you're seeing right now, but Team MP still trying their best to deal with that. Meanwhile, Free Marcy moving over to start the trash, moving over to Naraxis, the third boss, which is our favorite worm boss, of course.
Oh, the favorite worms indeed. I mean, this malicious manhandling by Rockmora on Team MPE is just too much to handle here. So moving to Free Marcy here, of course, they're getting a lot of the grub masters down. It'd be important to watch out for those very, very scary grubs before they metamorphosize.
Yeah, definitely. You do have to hard CC them by either a disorient or a stun. A displacement like a grip does not work, nor can you, kick them or silence them. That doesn't work. Otherwise, they will transform into an extra worm that are quite irritating to deal with, gripping melee all over the place, gripping all players all over the place, and of course dropping the pool under it. They will pull the rest of the room here. Should be pretty easy to deal with. I mean, they have a substantial amount of AoE damage. The Guardian, of course, going pretty big there, helping down DPS down all of those mobs, and they will be pulling Naraxis.
It was a very swole pull there by Free Marcy there, and they have a couple grubs, and you're seeing them there trying to add a little bit of extra damage. They're not really worrying about them too much until they start their cast. They're getting all those down in short order. It's a good thing that Team MPE had not actually had this issue on Naraxis, because if you look at the crowd surrounding Naraxis, just all the other spectators going on, I mean, it's glad that they don't really have much of an audience there.
Yeah, so I have just returned from going to the bathroom for about 20 minutes. We do see that Team MP Blood DK is still working on Rockmora. Should be able to get that down. As we said earlier, it will take a while for him to solo this. However, he has reached a cap on damage from these explosions. He'll never have more than 3 or 4 of these skitterers at a time. As long as he survives every hit here, there are 4 up this time. As long as he survives every hit here, which he easily should be able to do, it should be no problem. We do see that he is, of course, also using Archimon's Trinket, allowing him that absorb every 75 seconds. But this is just going to take a while at this point. In the meantime, Free Marcy is already working on Naraxis in the bottom. Notable mechanics here, of course, are those spectators that you spoke of, Jack. They do jump down in pairs, and if they reach the boss and eventually are not killed, and they are eaten by the boss, after which Naraxis will gain... Oh, we do have a death going down from arrow. They should have a battle rest. There it is, no problem. The boss will gain a 50% damage increase for the rest of the fight if they fail to kill those mobs. Also, if the tank fails to run away properly for the Spike Tongue, which we should be seeing coming up soon at 100 energy.
Yep, and you're seeing right here, I mean, Free Marcy's doing a very good job of making sure to keep everybody topped. You're talking about the Spike Tongue is coming out, so Brath does use his Druid Roar so that he's able to jump into this pool. The pool will slow, of course, his movement speed down so that he's not going to be getting dragged into it. Team MPE, or should I say Team Blood DK, is finally getting Rockmora down. Finally taking him down, solo Blood DK. exceptional job. staying alive.
I'm pretty sure at this point he's going to be taking all of the prize money for himself and not sharing it with any of his teammates. Finally, Rockmore does go down. They will be able to start their very fun barrel ride down the river. I'm sure they'll have much to discuss while next to each other in said barrels. But of course, all eyes on Free Marcy at the moment, substantially ahead. There's virtually no way they can lose this dungeon at this point, especially because they have the luxury of playing it safe now.
I mean, definitely the luxury of playing it safe, and that's one of the focuses that they want to have here. Just keep grinding the boss down, keep focusing on the ads, keep focusing on their fundamentals here, because that was the biggest thing that wiped Team MPEs. They just got away from their fundamentals. You know, the fundamental mechanics of the boss. It's not even any crazy positioning. It's not even any crazy abilities or things that you have to watch out for. It's just AoEing specific mobs down, focus targeting things. These are all things that need to be practiced anyway for getting specific trash packs down. It's just something that they utterly failed on for the first boss.
Right, you are, Jack. So, of course, the Toxic Wretch coming out from Neuraxis now, a constant AoE that dots the entire group and puts puddles down, making it very tough for melee to find a spot open to DPS at because the boss is indeed immobile. The healer will have to pay attention to that. In the meantime, we're almost at 20% on Neuraxis, meaning that she will, or he will, gain an extra 20% permanent damage as a soft enrage for the rest of the encounter until it's killed off. You can see these Devouts coming down, being cleaved well, and DPS before they split up, so they get a ton of damage on them, and we should have another spike time coming up not too long from now.
Team MPE going quickly through all those pelter packs. I guess they had a lot of cooldowns available to them since they were sitting on them for a couple minutes.
Yes, all their hour-long cooldowns did come up. I can't confirm this.
And of course, we're able to see them as they're just trying to chain pull, trying to get something going here. But Neuraxis is at 9% here for Free Marcy, going down very, very rapidly as he's trying to eat up that little kitty there of Wrath, and Wrath getting right back onto the boss, taking him down, and they are approaching, of course, Dourgul, the last boss here.
Yes, of course, does well there to get back to the boss prior to the Spike Tongue fully ending. Otherwise, the boss can turn around and melee one of the melee nearby and one-shot them, so it's important for the tank to blanket taunt on their way back in. They will be moving over to the right side, opting not to deal with that third Scorpion that we see some teams pull depending on their pull pattern and percentage they want, and they'll be going down through the middle here with a couple of extra pelters, and then soon enough we'll have to deal with those two Scorpion packs prior to Dourgul.
Yeah, you're interested to see if Team MPE and the effort, I guess you could say, that they're going to be putting in, if they're even going to be bothering with any large trash pulls, if they're even going to be focusing on anything large here. So overall, they're just pulling a couple mobs as Free Marcy is clearing out the remainder of the trash that is required of them. Again, it is teaming, so Free Marcy does have to play pretty careful with these Scorpion and Pelter packs that are coming up here.
Yeah, they just have to play it safe. And you ask, are they going to do any big pulls? There's just no reason. They know they're ahead at this point. They can also now wipe 2-3 times and still be ahead because of how many times Team MPE not only wiped, but also tried to kind of slowly kill the boss after an almost full wipe. So Team MPE is substantially behind at this point. Free Marcy pulling the first of the Demolisher packs here. You can actually interrupt these before they cast their Char Skin, and if you do so, they will not transform into this giant form.
Yeah, and you're seeing, we were talking about how, you do have those disaster situations where it doesn't even take a wipe to cause problems. You can even have times where you just drop a DPS or two, and then you're still having to grind away the boss because you don't have a battle res available or something like that. You're seeing Team MPE doing an extremely ambitious and aggressive pull here, getting all those Pelter packs together, trying to AoE them down in a very desperate play just to be able to do anything they can to kind of get themselves caught up back in the game here.
Yeah, well, they did pull a bit safe too. They dealt with that Hulk pack prior to pulling the rest, Team MP here, but of course they are pulling it, and we do see a death go down from the Hunter. Again, cast Feign Death very convincingly, is rezzed immediately, and they will continue doing some damage on the boss as they still have to do with that mass amount of trash in the meantime. Free Marcy, of course, going over to the last Scorpion pack here. For those at home, why are they not pulling the boss with the Scorpion pack? We do have another death from Team MP in the corner. I'm just tired of saying it, so I'm gonna let that one go for a moment. But Free Marcy, of course, you're asking at home, why do they not just pull the boss with the Scorpions? The boss will actually automatically pull all the trash in his kind of lower platform area here, including the Scorpions, so you do want to deal with them, get them out of the way. Team MP looks like they're headed for Wipe City at any moment now as well.
Yep, and you see, even as they're having to deal with the totem game, they still have more trash mobs up. They were not able to keep all the trash, solidified, kept together. Another death's going down, and again, you have the same thing that happens. You have boss is up, healer and the tank are the only ones left alive. And
I think this could take a while for that Blood DK to likely have to re-solo that boss. Free Marcy now dealing with the rest of the trash and getting ready to pull Dourgul, the final boss here. I think the DK is just opting to finish it off at this point. There's too much damage to deal with. They will be all having to run back. They did kill the trash though. which is, I guess, a consolation prize.
Yes.
But they will have to run all the way back and now re-engage Ularog. In the meantime, Free Marcy already starting on Doggrul, the final boss. Notables here are he does do crystal spikes, usually about 3 every rotation of his 100 energy. These are important for 2 reasons. One is this Molten Charskin that he spawns does need to be put through that wall. Once he does that, once he gets put into that wall, he will take 100% increased damage during his stun duration. Very important for players to be able to burn him down. And of course, Doggrul does have a frontal with the landslide that you want to make sure that you not only do not point towards the party, but once you return, you have to have your active mitigation up as the tank. Otherwise, you will take increased damage and get punted away.
I mean, you're seeing right here, I mean, at this point, it's just about adding as much damage as you possibly can, getting your positioning organized correctly. You're going to have another Char skin coming out and being able to just toss that into the wall like you were saying here. And overall, it's just right off the bat, you're trying to make sure you're stacking all your little crystal spikes together. You have a pretty solid wall that you're able to, get all of your Char skins into the same place, be positioned around them so that all the fixates will be there. And again, you're going to see the large AoE coming out from Doggrul in just a second here. So they're positioning the boss. That way they'll still be able to hit through the spikes. Retro Fresh taking quite a bit of damage there, but he gets himself positioned properly so that he can still DPS the boss through that magma wave.
Right, you are. I do like very much, Jack, as you mentioned, that they move the boss over to the wall prior to that magma wave to make sure that the melee still have 100% active uptime, DPSing him during his immobile phase there. Well done on Molten Charskin, spawning it directly into that crystal wall, and then they're going to be burning it down with that 100%.
I mean, you're seeing right here, just moving away from Volcanic, watching out for any of the walls that are coming up, taking down the Charskin as rapidly as you can. It was a very, very good move, like you were saying, making sure that the Charskin spawns immediately on that wall so they don't even have to worry about it. They don't have to waste an extra wall or anything like that. They just instantly are able to jump on it, have that focused target that Team MPE was lacking, and get it down very, very rapidly.
Of course, we're full screen here now because there are several members of Team MPE currently being loaded into ambulances, unfortunately, after the punishment they've received from that second boss. Free Marcy should have free reign here in order to not only finish off this series, but as we spoke to Rob earlier, finally free Marcy.
It's astounding to see Marcy freed once again. We're all very proud of it. But what would the team be named now that Marcy is free?
I think they would change it to Freed Marcy.
Freed Marcy.
Yep, that would make most sense to me. Not too invasive on, of course, their title for any future sponsors and any paraphernalia that they've already built and constructed. Now, they didn't do as... Oh, I was actually going to say they didn't do as well of a job dragging the boss over to the wall here, but they do still have a bit more time prior to his magma wave phase.
You're seeing the Charskin's actually going to come out right again, and it does spawn immediately on top of the wall. So very good timing there, and then they have the last crystal spikes before the next magma wave.
I do think that Molten Charskin they could have just ignored. I mean, the boss was low enough, and it looks like they're kind of opting to do so. They might just kill them both at the same time, but it looks like Free Marcy is going to dominate here, and they're going to sweep this series 2-0 with a very dominant performance.
Yikes. That was a game. That was a game we saw. So obviously, coming into this, we kind of talked about some of the teams that hadn't performed as strongly. We're going to need to do some serious work.
There's a lot that Friends with Affix is playing for as well. I mean, already we are seeing that the only region with 2 teams qualifying at this point is APAC. So they're kind of leading with sending the most teams so far. If Friends with Affixes can pull a major upset here, we'll have 2 NA teams, but most likely Raider.io I think is clearly the favorite team. What do you think of this pool coming out of them?
We're actually seeing a bigger pull from Friends with Affixes here because they're pulling the mini boss and the pack up ahead as well. So have a little bit more of a pack here. It is kind of dangerous with Sanguine as well because they got to make sure that they keep moving. As you can see, one of those mobs, or the actual mini-boss, actually struggling around there a little bit, casting. The Moonkin going super low there. Raider.io just going to come up to that boss, being a little bit behind in terms of where they are right now. But if they can get this next pull just controlled, they should be able to just delete it.
Yeah, we're seeing Friends with Affixes doing this pull pretty cleanly. Raider.io starting to speed up ahead, already getting this first pull here on the stairwell.
Yeah, and Friends with Affix is now killing that mini-boss, which Raider.io had a little bit more focus because they didn't pull that extra trash. So now they're dealing with these ads and gotta make sure that they stun interrupt them. Actually, the Moonkin going for a little bit extra mob percentage here with those ads on the sides, pulling them, just leave them in there. They move easily, so they shouldn't be that bad. That is a lot of trash, though, for Raider.io.
I will say, though, you can already see, like, Raider.io having a clear plan. We are going to see the Rogue dipping very low here. It doesn't look, and just going to just fall down at this point.
But Friends with Affix are having 3 deaths already, if not 4 in total as well. They're actually doing a really sloppy pull here. I think they might have a full raid wipe there as well. Yeah, indeed, they do.
Yeah, I don't mind this pool coming out of Raider.io either. You can definitely sacrifice those 5 seconds of time from the death. The rogue already back into the action, and that's a tricky pool to do with Sanguine as well. You got to really be rotating the mobs around, but so much trash already done. They're already about at that 50% mark. They're going to be able to just stealth past this pack, and this is a pack that can be somewhat tricky. We've already talked about it before. When those metamorphoses start to go off from those fel-infused mobs, if you don't get a kick going, it can just be an absolute team wipe. But coming up here, they're just going to throw out another group of CC because they already have that 49% because the boom can rotate it around, pulled additional trash. They're going to be able to start things off on Tirithon.
I really love seeing this from Raider.io. This is the first time we actually see them skip those trash that effectively too. Just ignore them. Just let's get to the boss. They're already at 50%. Fringe Affixes is quite a bit behind, and they are dealing with those trash too. However, relatively swiftly as it is not fortified. So Raider.io now 75%. The boss has just gone into Vengeance form now, taking a little bit more damage, throwing out his glaives. So they should have a relatively easy time dealing with this boss here. However, remember, it is 17, it is tyrannical. This boss gets dicey really, really fast.
Yeah, and one of the things they definitely want to be paying attention to, want to make sure that they put up their active mitigation, otherwise the boss will actually, at certain moments, be able to get a shield on himself, and that'll just make it that much longer to actually take him down. We do see Dark Strikes going out right now. Friends with Affixes, though, in the bottom portion of your screen, did manage to pull the boss now after their wipe. They do have 7 deaths at the current moment. You can see their tank getting absolutely spiked down. Cannot get above that 50% mark and is going to fall down. Battle Res comes out very quickly. They have plenty of them at their disposal, and they are 80%. They have 80% already on the boss.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising as well, especially with the Druid ending up dying on that boss. We saw Raider actually have that shield up because the tank didn't have active mitigation up. It doesn't do that much every time it hits. If you don't have active mitigation up, it puts a little bit of shield on the boss, so even if you let one through, it's a little bit of damage loss on the boss because you're obviously dealing with that shield. But now he's going into Havoc form. This is where he's gonna start hurting. This is the real DPS race of the fight. You're gonna have to deal with the fire explosion as you see all the time, as well as that's the hatred coming out right now. The Moonkin going for it and just running away. Everyone needs to deal with that because that is gonna almost one-shot. Actually, the tank standing in it. I'm not sure if that's because he used Blood Mirror, I believe, which actually relays that damage back to the boss a little bit. Sometimes you see the DK standing and stuff, just to do a little bit more damage on the boss. And then that's a Furious Blast. Needs to interrupt that one, try to do it as late as possible, just so the boss just basically stands around there and doesn't do anything. And
taking a look at the Boomkin talents right now, as Raider.io is managing to get down this first boss here, you can see that the Boomkin talented for a very strong AoE build, but didn't actually talent into Soul of the Farce. And this is something that I actually mentioned a little bit earlier today. When you do switch on that ring, the ring of the Archdruid, the legendary ring, you're going to be able to get Soul of the Farce for free, so you can actually spec into Incarnation. Then you're still going to have that additional AoE damage coming off of Shooting Stars, and like, it just allows you to do big damage on the boss as well. And we could see that last time around, that the single target damage was not lacking from the Boomkin. It's not lacking here either for Friends with Affixes.
I think one of the things Raider.io is really benefiting them is that mass grip. You saw right there, they just pulled all the mobs, all the small imps, gripped them all, and then just destroyed them. Meanwhile, Friends with Affixes is now on the Havoc form of this boss. He's done with his damage his phase when he takes less damage. The boss should die relatively fast now, but Raider.io on that Imp Mother and should have it down right away there, and just to see if they are lucky with the elevator and with the avalanche potion.
Yeah, and exactly what you're looking for here is you want the elevator to be all the way down, then you can avalanche potion down, and that's what they got there, and that just saves them quite a few seconds of time, because you can't actually avalanche potion if the elevator's even halfway up. You kind of have to wait for it to come all the way up and then go back down. So that's going to give Raider.io that little bit of an extra push, as they do get to pull Inquisitor right now, and it looks like they're going to be pulling some of the dogs as well, and this is standard for them. You do see quite a lot. Their Moonkin actually trying to pull additional trash, having really strong cleave, also having that warrior who can get some serious work done as well. I'm sure if we would actually see, most likely the warrior maybe even spec into something like sweeping strikes to get some of that additional cleave damage. Now with the Inquisitor of Torment, there's a lot of stuff to be keeping an eye on, literally and besides the actual eyes.
Well, there's the ad you need to keep an eye on. However, right now we're going to see him teleport over to one of the doors and open them. Actually, it looked like the whole team was getting disoriented there. That was... I don't really know. That's not really the Raider IO we've seen before. I'm not quite sure why that happened, but the whole team was actually disoriented.
Well, more interesting than that to me is for a second it looked like they were maybe thinking about actually going for the pool where you just leave the Inquisitor there, you actually line of sight him so he'll come back with the ads, but having that Death Knight, you're able to do exactly what we just saw. That's that Gore Fiend's grip coming out once those ads are out, pulling them all in, getting massive AoE damage out onto everything. There's the eye again. Doesn't look like we're going to see too much problem with this mechanic. Basically, you just need to look at the eye when it puts that ability out, or you will get disoriented. One of the things with the ads, when you actually do pull them in on this particular key, with the quaking, the group is very stacked up. You don't want to be taking that additional damage. We are going to see Raider IO attempt to spread out. Now, Friends with Affixes finally beat that elevator boss. Now they're going to be pulling Inquisitor again. And this is the thing, Friends with Affixes, they're going to lose another player here. They're up to, they have 9 deaths at this point. And we were saying that even if they're going relatively quickly, but that's just putting more and more of a distance between them and Raider.io, and Raider.io looking very clean, even with those little things like seeing the moon can actually pull additional ads. Look how far they are on trash.
That's also where you really have that benefit from that DK, as you said. You see those grips, as soon as the ads spawn, everything is on top of each other. The rogue is able to just go absolute ham on those ads, just destroying them. Friends with Affix haven't won that one death, and as you said, they've had several deaths before, so they clearly do not have a combat res available for them right now.
Yep. Yeah, and one of the other things about the rogue too is you do mention the rogue damage being great, and when those ads come out, not only is the rogue able to do some AoE damage, one of the really nice things like Death from Above going to be huge against all those ads, but actually using that Shuriken Storm once again to create additional combo points, to put more eviscerates into the boss, going to result in a huge increase on single target DPS as well. One of the mechanics that we haven't mentioned so far is this one, Sap Soul, which is coming out, so that's actually going to steal the next ability that you put out, and it's pretty easy to play around though, using an ability that's less important, you're not going to need in a very pivotal moment.
Yeah, we can see also all those ads that Raider.io has pulled extra with the boss, he's cleaving them down kinda. Like, I'm pretty sure that Raider.io has practiced this a ton and knows exactly how many mobs they want to have to deal with before they end up skipping some trash. And we've seen that especially in the last corridor. It's a little bit of a slow corridor, so right now we're seeing them killing the second boss. Inquisitor is down for Raider.io now, and they're gonna deal with that Shivara.
Yeah, looking at the Warrior now, this was kind of one of the things I wanted to see. We are going to see that sweeping strike, so that's going to give additional cleave. Also, Avatar and Ravager. Now, this is kind of the wombo combo for Warriors when you actually do get into these Mythic Pluses, because you can just pop that Avatar, you can pop that Ravager all at once, and that is basically just going to do so much damage, especially if you stack it with things like the Glaives. It's just so much damage all at once, and it's very quick. They come off of cooldown non-stop, so you basically just look at trash packs and say, hey, do we want to delete this one? Okay, I'm going to take a breather, and then I will delete the next one. Now, Raider.io getting that Shivara down, expecting them to go straight to Glazer here. This is the more standard strategy. We did see Premonition kind of taking a Yui, going over to take down the good old Ash Golem first, but man, Friends with Affix is not having a DPS up this entire fight, and being one man down, just going to make it take that much longer.
Yeah, that fight will take so much time. They've only just finished with one of the doors as well, so they're gonna have to deal with another door and another 40% on a tyrannical 17 boss. That is a lot of HP, and they do not have a DK, so they can't solo this one.
Yeah, now on to Glazer. This boss we've already seen a few times today. Major mechanics that you want to be watching out for is everything that is shooting around on the ground. He then goes into this phase where he puts a shield up on himself. One of the mirrors, the overloaded lens that you see on your screen, you need to be able to DPS that. Once you finish taking it down, it'll pop up and you're actually able to redirect it. The eye beam comes out, you shoot it back at the boss, and then you're back to DPSing.
Yeah, you gotta point these mirrors back at him, and right now he's gonna take a bit of more damage for a while, for like 10 or 15 seconds, I believe. And this is where you really see cooldowns coming out. We see the Holy Paladin just using wings and probably just destroying this boss quite a bit too, because it's very important to try to be able to push it so fast that you do not get a second lens phase, as that will make you spend so much time on this boss, and that's Something I've seen several teams do before, so I have no doubt to see Raider IO do exactly that as long as they don't have any death.
Yeah, Meow Chan's damage being really impressive here. And one of the other things to note about Meow Chan being in that melee range there, he's going to actually spawn some of those blue orbs that you see running across the ground, going to put them in the direction of Glazer, so he'll take additional damage there as well. I mean, just got to take a moment here to just commend Raider.io. I mean, they're playing it by the book. You see them doing those cheeky little extra pulls. I mean, it's not bolstering, so they don't have to really worry about that. It's just, it's free combo points, and it's free Moonkin cleave. And we already saw that the Moonkin is wearing Lady and the Child as well, so the Moonfire is going to be cleaving as well. It's just free damage at that point. Now they have 81%. I'm just curious to see how they take the rest of the dungeon when they actually do get to that spooky room. Obviously, they have to get Ash Golem out of the way first, but once they get down there, seeing which pulls they skip is going to be a big factor. Now, Friends with Affixes not playing, I mean, they haven't looked that bad, right? They have the 9 deaths on the board, which is definitely concerning, but they've kind of regained. But having their no warrior during that boss fight just added so much time to their clock. They're going to pull the Shavara right now. I think the big thing is that I want to see with Friends with Affixes when we get to the second game is we've seen them before have performances like this where they kind of have like that one trip and then all of a sudden they're a great team. I want to see them just not have that trip and see what they really can do when they are racing against Raider.io, who is now working on Ash Golem, who is currently brittle.
Yeah, losing that warrior really make them take so much longer time to deal with a second boss. So Raider IO now on Ash Golem, getting a 60% after the first brittle phase where he takes more damage, and then now having to actually do the phase a little bit, soaking those fires, as you can see the AMS coming out there as well. So you're gonna see probably the row going over some as well with Cloak of Shadows. Right there we see them just to soak them up. It's actually really close there because you want to make sure that you soak them up so that they do not creep into those fire rats, as a little bit hard time seeing here, but they are close to the boss. Also moving the boss on top of it so that they can do really effective cleave, as we've seen several times from Raider IO's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things we can actually see, and yeah, we are seeing it right now, is the Death Knight can just go ahead and pop things like AMS and just run right through the fire and deal with that mechanic very easily. So we are going to see their Death Knight being the one to lead the charge on dealing with that mechanic. More fire puddles coming down right now, but it shouldn't be a problem. Plenty of real estate is left, but actually the Paladin going to take care of it here. Second brittle phase now coming out, and the damage is going to be absolutely bonkers as the boss does take additional damage during this portion of the fight. Friends with Affixes, though, they're going to be working on Ash Golem slightly behind. They will have to hang a Yui, though, and go back to Glazer. This is going to be their third boss. So they are going for the route that we saw Premonition. Maybe this is kind of the NA route that is being taken over and over again, because this happened twice in the region, but they are at a much slower place than their NA brothers were.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it's probably more due to cooldown management. As we saw in that series too, the warrior was dead for quite a while on the boss before, so now they're going into this one and just, I guess, kind of having all cooldowns ready in both these cases, so that's why they opt to go for Ash Golem instead. So Raider IO now killed Ash Golem, Friends of Affixes on him, and yet another boss. So Raider IO probably gonna skip here with the Shroud, probably with a movement speed potion as well, or it looks like they actually just straight up invis potioned everyone there, yeah.
It's interesting to see the Invis Potion there. So one of the big things, and mentioned this a little bit earlier in the day, when you do have the Quaking, it can make the stealth pulls very tricky. So they're going to use this Invis Potion all the way. Now the Quaking's going to come at a pretty decent time. They should be able to just plummet on down with these Meteor Potions, and that's the second elevator that did really go in their favor.
Friends of Affix is having that Hunter dying there and ending up having to combat res him. They have plenty of combat reses, however, they also have plenty of deaths, so they have a lot of, are using them constantly. Raider IO, however, as you said, the Invis Potion there, which is a little bit different from what we've seen before. We've seen other teams Invis Potion right here after these spiders instead, so you can't actually Shroud at that point, because if you Shroud one of them, you might not make it through both of the mini bosses there. So
also the thing with Raider.io is they pull with that in mind as well, so they still do need to get an 8% here on the board if they want to get into Cordana, and they do have the Shroud of Concealment here, so they will be able to skip a decent amount of trash here. Just have to make sure Quaking does go in their favor, but they will only need to do an additional pull alongside, and now they are going to pull those spiders. So it looks like they're going to be doing these spiders next to to the mob that is somewhat of the gatekeeper here, that Broodmaster, and then there's one more mob that's actually going to be, I think that Broodmaster is the last one.
Yeah, you have the Brood Mother, and then after that you have one of those Vanquished Spirits. It's kind of risky, as you mentioned earlier in a previous series, to kill Spiderlings and the Vengeance, Spirit of Vengeance, because that Spirit of Vengeance does not move.
But it's
getting these Sanguine
it's the spirit. Yeah, it's the Spirit of Vengeance though that actually does open the door,
Yep.
right? So we have seen some groups kind of been at the point where they only need the Spirit of Vengeance, but they pull additional pulls. Raider.io maybe pulling one extra mob here. I was a little surprised that they pulled all the spiders. The Broodmother does give a decent amount of percentage up on the board. Raider.io definitely in the driver's seat here. Friends with Affix is now working on Glazer, getting some decent damage onto him. They need to get down that lens right now if they want to catch up. But I think the main thing is here, they need a big wipe. That's the only way that they potentially catch up to Raider.io. And I don't necessarily think that, when we jumped into the series, was saying that a big thing that could happen is, they make sure to get down that Vengeful Spirit first too, so they can actually have someone charge on up, get the RP started. So finding those little inches is going to put a lot of seconds in Raider.io's favor. But the big thing to look out for was, I really think Friends with Affixes, we've seen performances in the past where they could be very close to Raider.io in this particular dungeon, and if Friends with the Affixes can slightly regain when they get in this next series, maybe they can actually take a map, especially with their pick. Maybe they can take one off of Raider.io, but going into Cordana here, Raider.io probably not breaking a sweat.
Yeah, we've seen them basically do flawless pulls, flawless dungeons, and bosses in the past, so seeing something that would cost a detrimental wipe for them is going to be unlikely. However, it can happen. It is tyrannical. So right now they're dealing with this ad that stole the light from them. They do not have the hunters. They can't look up, find Cordana easier. So they have to actually get that light back, look, and then find the boss. And now they just gotta get her down to 40%. Meanwhile, Friends with Affix is now gonna be dealing with this jailer here. They're having the hunter actually move past and deters. I'm probably gonna feign death eventually and just have that kind of sacrifice tactic without actually sacrifice. But didn't work out well for them at all. They do end up losing the Moonkin.
Yeah, pulled aggro. I mean, one of the main things you want to do there is you're basically the decoy as your team runs by, and also the Meteor Potion going to slam them straight into the elevator, which they will now need to ride down. It looks like one member did get through, so that is really unfortunate as far as seconds are going to be for Friends with Affixes. But jumping back on board with Raider.io, I think the main thing to note is all of the things that we can sit here and say as casters we would like to see improve are so nitpicky and unrealistic. Like, I really think that Raider.io did perform this really well. I mean, there are obviously things that you can say, but not being in the dungeon, it's a lot easier to say those things than actually enact them. So you got to give it up to Raider.io, exactly what we do expect from them. This is the leading team in the world right now. It seems to be the favorite to win this, but Friends with Affixes definitely do have a shot coming into the second map, but they are not looking good here. All of a sudden, they're going to lose another two.
Yeah, I believe that was intentional because they were trying to skip effectively. And the Raider.io, as we can see right now, dealing with this wall phase. I'm not sure if they actually got that last creeping, not creeping doom, the purple stuff. They did not actually clear it off completely. But right now, they just gotta wait this creeping doom out, not stand in these walls, and then they gotta prepare to kill that ad that's gonna come up and make the boss immune for, well, while he's casting. So we're gonna see, we're instantly just gonna see Meow-chan just interrupt, stun that one right away, and then just not caring about that ad, because as it always spawns in this quarter. There we go, Avatar of Vengeance, instant Hammer of Justice, boss is not immune anymore, and now they just gotta make sure that they don't stand in that glaive that's coming back, because that when it does, you take twice the damage.
Yeah, but once again, everything ends up working out for them. You know, Meow-chan has to somewhat sacrifice a little bit of damage to actually move over to that puddle to get rid of it, holding the light, runs over, but then you want to be tanking it in that corner anyway. Meow-chan can instantly snap back onto the target. We're seeing a lot of damage coming out with Meow-chan staying in tow with the tank here, but just an impressive run all around for Raider.io. They deserved some Titan Forge loot coming out of this one.
Both teams kind of living up to their identities here as we've come to know them over the course of the Mythic Dungeon Invitational. Raider.io came in. It wasn't a flawless run, but it was close enough for all intents and purposes. They still look just as powerful as they were looking when we saw them last weekend. And Friends with Affixes as well. You know, I talked
Well, we had this in exactly the same map in the previous series that we casted earlier, and just like then we have Tyrannical on Court of Stars, so teaming will make trash more dangerous to deal with, but the previous team we saw there doing that just did big pulls anyway and just didn't really care that much. So interesting to see what we're going to see from these two teams, how they end up pulling. We even saw the cats being pulled at the very start from Honestly.
Yeah, and one other thing, just want to say, usually we do see this first one skipped, expecting to see that again. Not a very efficient pull. We've said it throughout all of the weeks, but the questions that I do have for you: what moments in this dungeon do you think are going to be the most scary for that Brewmaster Monk? Actually going to see him popping up on your screen right now. Obviously, it is sometimes good to play comfortably, and maybe that was one of the reasons they felt like they had some of those hiccups in the last dungeon. So they will have that advantage, which is an important one. But do you think that there's anything that's particularly terrifying for the Brewmaster in cap coming out here?
No, I believe it's more than fine. Running basically whatever, you gotta play to your strengths a little bit there, and the Brewmaster is just I guess all pretty good all around. If they don't need that combat rest, they already have two. So and actually they have three because the Hunter is actually BM. So Raider IO only having two, but they doesn't really seem to slow them down much at all.
Well, you can also tell that they have experience doing it on the Brewmaster. They actually throw out that Paralyze very early there so they can close space and then pull the mobs. And one of the things with that is you see that initial spike damage come out sometimes, and it's able to just chunk a tank. So by closing that space, just making sure they pull it, they don't have any sloppy deaths. And Trekkie, I know you love which direction they went here.
Yeah, they went left, they went downstairs, and I really like this. There's a few mobs to deal with here. There's especially a caster. You just need to make sure that he's interrupted and a few guards. Otherwise, it's very efficient percentage to get down, and then you just get up. Raider IO being a little bit going up now after having killed that and just doing a relatively big pull. There's no the affixes are teaming Volcanic and Tyrannical, so there's no reason not to pull big here outside of having people dying. Raider IO actually have their Moonkin go super low, but that is a lot of Volcanics we see in the corner.
Yeah, I mean, the Moonkin's going to be dealing with most of the Volcanics at this point. Definitely with AoE pulls as well. And I already saw what was running the Lady and the Child in previous dungeons. Expecting to see that as well here for those bigger pulls at the beginning of this dungeon. Probably switching off of it a little bit later. That's going to allow just a serious amount of damage to be mobile as well. Getting that extra 20% off of your Moonfire. So that deals with Volcanic very nicely here. And we are seeing just neck and neck at this point. Friends with Affixes and Raider.io both choosing to go left, going down, coming back up after getting that efficient trash. So the boss is going to be one of those defining moments, seeing who can do more single target damage into a Tyrannical boss, which you already have mentioned, Trekkie.
Well, the Vim just going super low there, getting that cat jumping on him. It's not that dangerous because it's not raging or anything like that, but it still deals a ton of damage, and that is just really, really dangerous. If the affix, it would have been slightly different too. Even then, he ends up going down. So Raider IO actually pulling the boss right now. They're so quite a bit ahead. I didn't actually see how they dealt with the trash beforehand. They might actually have skipped it, I would believe, because that's a lot of trash that you don't really necessarily want to deal with.
So I would explain.
As you see, you see it there in the corner.
I would explain it to you, but I don't have $1, so I can't make the pun I want to make. So maybe if you lend me $1, I will be able to explain it. But we see Raider.io and Friends with Affixes. Wow, Friends with Affixes is going to lose another one. They had so many battle reses at their disposal.
They ended up doing exactly the same. They sacrificed.
Yeah, they did sacrifice.
Had him run off, sacrifice, just because that trash is not worth dealing with. It's teaming. It has those extra arcane elementals. You don't really want to deal with those to do the frontal effect. So they just ended up sacrificing. I assume that Raider IO would have used a Shroud for that, or just Invis Potion, as we have seen them do that in the past. So right now, instead, they're on the Patrol Captain, Gerdo, and having to deal with him. They have the Holy Paladin for when he puts out the debuff that makes it have to jump or move to get it off. You can just instantly dispel one, and you can freedom one, and then you can shift out of one, and then even you have that Rogue being able to Cloak of Shadows it too. Right there we see it right off the bat. The Moonkin getting that freedom, so he doesn't need to move at all. You can just stay out and DPSing.
Yeah, he's still wearing a Lady and the Child as well. One thing that I did just notice when we actually did see those Moonfires come down, but they only have about 3% left on this boss. We've mentioned a few times before, we actually don't have any items in here except for the Vial, so we are going to see the Patrol Captain just go ahead and poison himself here. It makes it really nice for Raider.io. They're going to be able to move forward. And now the question is, which path do they actually decide to take here?
They are splitting up, actually. The Miao-chan going forward, just trying to... I'm not sure if he's trying to see where the Enforcer might have spawned. Meanwhile, the others seem to go at the very start instead. So they are definitely splitting up here for a reason. And Miao-chan just going in and dying, I guess. I'm not quite sure why, but I'm sure we will get back to that. Oh, he just goes back in to die to get rest, to run back in to the others.
That is really interesting because the others made it there just as fast. So what do you think that Miao-chan actually gets out of that?
But they might have done it because the others might have been able to have their combat invisibility potion available, and obviously some could stealth through that pack that they didn't end up skipping. I believe they had Miao-chan die once again here, right, as he released, got back to that pole, and just ended up dying from incidental AoE, and just able to release back up again. And
so it's it's a really interesting strategy, and the thing with it as well is it just shows a huge amount of planning. Friends with the Affixes just get the Patrol Captain down now, while we see an Enforcer being worked on by Raider.io. Really good positioning, going to be inside of this building here. That can allow for a lot of stuff to go down as far as line of sight is concerned. There are just multiple ways to break LOS. Some serious damage is going to be coming out onto the DK tank, but he should be nice and fine here. Pretty sizable pull, but because it is on Tyrannical, this isn't necessarily going to be a scary moment for them. Usually when you get up to this part of the dungeon is when it starts to get scary. If it's on Fortified, this is the trash to be looking out for, but when it is on Tyrannical, it's going to be that second boss where the heat is really kicked up.
Yeah, I'm super excited actually seeing in this series, we see both teams go back. I think Miao-chan might have actually pulled that trash pack and then run away from it so that the others could have walked past. Would have made a lot of sense to me at least, so that is quite possible. Friends with Affixes, however, also doing that strat, which is really interesting because neither of the teams in the previous series in Court of Stars did that, and here we see both teams doing it, and it just kind of goes to show that both those teams kind of knew what they were doing, might have been practice, might have been doing their homework, trying to get ready for this, and knew exactly what they want to do in Court of Stars.
Yeah, I want to talk about Friends with Affixes as well, because it's clear that they're going with the same exact strategy as Raider.io. You know that they probably weren't talking to each other. I'm curious if Friends with Affixes, maybe if they were talking to maybe Premonition, you know, the other team in the NA, they know that with how the bracket shook up, that they wouldn't necessarily be playing against each other. Saw a little sign of that when they were actually in the previous dungeon, when they were in Vault, because they did that similar thing, going to Ash Golem instead of going over to the Eye first. But now here we actually see Raider.io doing something very different. I'm curious if maybe Premonition would have been doing the same thing as well, but it seems to be one of the fastest strategies. Friends with Affix is starting to close that gap that Raider.io got up at the beginning of the series. The main thing is just all going to come down to the bosses here, Trekkie, and they are going to be tough.
Yeah, and what we actually saw here from Raider.io was really interesting, because we've seen when we've seen teams wipe in this instance, it's almost always been the Enforcers, not being able to line of sight them properly. And Raider.io taking care of that Enforcer in that house a bit while ago, and then after that, dealing with that mini-boss, doesn't really do much, and pulling a ton of trash at the same time.
Yeah, I think one of the big things with these Enforcers too, as well, is we saw a lot of Court of Stars on like Fortified in the earlier stages of the dungeon. Like a lot of it was on Fortified, so those Enforcers were just that much scarier. And we talked about how the bosses are really scary here on Tyrannical, but they didn't have to deal with that. That's not the case today, but once again, perfect pull on the Enforcer, because it is nearly impossible to get any disruption going, so you really do need that line of sight to be saving yourself from that fell detonation. And you can see them playing it textbook here. Raider.io getting very close to getting that second boss. Friends with Affix is going for a very massive pull.
They're doing the exact same pull, which is I find is be really interesting. They pull exactly the same one. They have the first attempt. The healer going super low though, but they are doing the same strat there. They need to make sure that they deal with the construct here, because he does a cast that ends up that puts a heal on, or hot on him, that heals everything around him, not himself however. But you just need to see that one, knock it down. We saw a knock before, or just interrupt stuns just to deal with that. And it's still alive, but they are dealing with this ad from the boss as well, that is called Amakucha, if you didn't see that before.
Oh, beautiful pronunciation of that name. I would not have been brave enough to try that one, Trekkie. So one of the big things, like as you mentioned before you said that complete crossword puzzle of a name. Raider.io and Friends with Affix is pretty much mirroring each other. Of course, Raider.io is a little bit ahead here, but the strategy is just exactly the same. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those strategies. One of the cool things about the Mythic Dungeon Invitational, everyone watching at home, kind of taking notes, trying to figure out what they're going to do when they get into dungeons. This kind of seems to be the new standard pull, and it isn't the one that we saw the other groups doing. So hats off to Friends with Affixes. Now jumping back on with Raider.io as they are going to try to get down here. I'm going to take a step in your shoes. Balgar the Watcher as they try to bring him down. You do see their warrior getting very low, but they're able to do it without a problem.
Yeah, but Friends with Affix is trying to catch up a little bit of time here, taking that first lieutenant together with the next step forces. It's going to give them 5% trash percentage too. So they're just going to make sure that they get those down. At the same time, the second lieutenant going to come running. And meanwhile, Raider.io is now dealing with the third enforcer, third and final enforcer for them. Going to have the ad come out, and they are perfect on percentage. Both teams are actually exactly the same, except for the fact that Friends with Affix is just one mini-boss behind.
Yeah, which is a decent amount of time, but that's why I'm kind of just highlighting that. Really, Flame Wraith and Melandris, these are bosses that wipes can happen on. And you can almost forgive a group for a wipe happening on Tyrannical on these bosses. The way that both of them work is they're going to ramp up in damage throughout the fight. And if you get yourself in a position where there's that one little hiccup and you have to invest a cooldown, and then you don't have it when the damage just stacks up to the point that it's very unforgivable, you can easily have that full team wipe. Now Raider.io going to be getting down this last lieutenant and moving over to the boss.
I really like what Friends with Affix is doing, how they're all standing close to that wall so that they can actually end up line of sighting the disintegration beam if they need to. However, every single one of them went on the tank, which means that he deals less damage. However, nobody else takes that damage, so it's very safe that way. And now they're going up to the last enforcer. Meanwhile, Raider.io just finished that last minute boss off. Gonna come up, gonna pull Flame Wrath in just a few seconds here.
Yeah, and the thing is even if you don't need to use it, right? It all did go their way and go onto their tank. Being prepared, always going to be the best policy. And we haven't seen this very often. They're actually going to get right up against the fountain. I like this. It does make it very easy to deal with these imps that are going to be coming out. They want to make sure to invest all of their Blood Elf silences into these imps and just be very disruptive on them in general as they are going to plummet down. Having that Boomkin, having that warrior, we're going to see massive amounts of damage coming out here to get rid of those imps. That first pack, very easy to deal with, but they're going to get more and more difficult to deal with because Flame Wraith is just going to be dealing more damage. So every second they're up, going to be less and less forgiving.
Yeah, we already see a ton of damage on top of the raid here, but it's going to go up even more. And there we go, the second wave of Flame Wraiths as well. They're doing a very good job at making sure that everyone is stacked up so that the ads spawn. They spawn under players a few seconds delayed after the ability comes out from Flame Wraith. And right now we're gonna see the burning intensity. There we go. Now it's stacked up another stack, which means that it does more damage on the full group. So every time she does that cast, it's gonna be more and more damaged. And now the imp spawn is coming out as well. Not as perfectly stacked up there, but they should just be able to make quick work of them. Just make sure that they do not get those casts off. There we go, a shockwave stun from the warrior as well. Just making sure that they do not get anything off. Acid damage right now is very devastating.
That's one of the nice things about pulling right on top of the fountain at the beginning. If you get in a situation where shockwave's on cooldown, your solar beam's on cooldown, just all and like no one has a belt silence, you can basically just kind of line of sight and actually just use more of the area that you do have that is clean to avoid that damage. Now with only 8% left, and we do see the Moonkin getting very low here, maybe choosing to pop a renewal or something like that, but will manage to get healed back up. And now Raider.io, just if they can solve this mystery nice and quick, they should be able to pull ahead because Friends with Affix is just getting their pull going onto the boss. And if Raider.io does this, they are going to be able to close this one out. They also do have a Paladin, which is going to make it just a little bit easier. That pesky Paladin, man.
It's actually only Protection Paladins that can find the Remonger, the Dreadlord easier. Holy Paladin is not going to be having any luck there. None of the teams actually having anyone that can do it, more than having to actually open your eyes and look.
Oh, I didn't even know that was only Prod. I didn't realize that it was only Prod. So yeah, one of the other ones, of course, is going to be Spectral Sight that we can see as well. So that pops up on all specs of Demon Hunters. But it looks like Raider.io able to close this one out very quickly, figuring out who it is, and they're running on over.
We actually see the warrior now putting on his gotta go fast boots and Sephir's Secret just to try to get faster between pulls. Would be very surprised if this is what he actually ends up using on any kind of bosses or anything. But here, it's just all about movement speed. You just run a little bit faster, might as well. And now they're just waiting for this skull mob to come out.
Gotta go so fast that you use Wraithwalk in place. That is ultimate speed. Now busting out the moves. Raider.io, I'm not gonna lie, they look pretty confident here as they do wait, putting on a show for us as the Dreadlord does pop out of his disguise. We've seen some groups in the past, and maybe we will see it from them too, actually move the Dreadlord out, try to get a little bit closer to the door, but with the amount of time that they have, I think they may just try to delete it right where it stands.
It depends a little bit on what kind of comp you have. As you mentioned, we've seen teams drag it slowly over to where the last boss is. It can buy you a little bit of time, but you can also completely negate that time if you have the healer leave at like 5-10% on the boss, and he will be there in time anyway, and then everyone else has a minute to get there. So meanwhile, Friends of Affix is doing still a good job on this second last boss, Flame Breath, and another 7% to go, 6%, and they're just going to make sure that they finish it off. Everyone going super low though, so they're going to have some healing cooldowns come out here before they actually get finished off, and there we go. That was getting a little bit too close to the end there, but
that was a lot closer than it was for Raider.io. That's undeniable. It seemed like it might have been one of those scenarios that we actually saw some people fall down. We saw the Dots do some work, but now they're going to start an investigation of their own as Raider.io sits and waits out the RP. Actually going to be dropping down a pylon there. Wonder if they're going to be stacking around that pylon.
Yeah. I believe that right now they're just trying to show off. I'm pretty sure they know that they're quite ahead, so now the boss is getting ready to pummel them, and there we go. Raider.io now against Melandris.
And Melandris is similar to Flame Wraith in the damage is going to stack. Which abilities should everyone be keeping an eye on, Trekkie?
We saw actually people dying from that piercing glaive we just saw earlier. The boss spawns a lot of copies on him. Every time he charges, as we saw right there, he spawns a copy that lives for about a minute and a half. And then that one will do the same abilities as he will doing. So now he did the Slicing Maelstrom. It's only 2 copies up, so there's 3 of him doing that ability. Now there's 4 of him gonna do those abilities. That's a flame, that's a Piercing Gale that you need to make sure that you step out. This room gets crowded so fast because of all the abilities he does. Whirlwind, the Piercing Gale, and then you gotta make sure that you do not die from this Maelstrom. As we see, Raider.io taking a ton of damage right here, keeping everyone alive. There's just a few ticks of it, so it gets dangerous, but it's over relatively quickly.
Yeah, big thing to know. Raider.io, if they close this one out, they are going to be qualifying to move to those semifinals, and then they will be Europe's only chance to actually win the entire thing. If Friends with Affixes can keep this alive, it will take most likely a wipe to come out from Raider.io.
Yeah, Raider.io having 2 deaths, only really one being intentional, however, but still managing to stack up quite a lot of a lead here. Now having Melandris at 50%, meanwhile Friends of Affix is still dealing with that Dreadlord. And now we should see another Maelstrom come out from Raider.io right there. There we go. That's a lot of damage. Moonkin standing very far out there, but getting topped up. Meowshan also getting really low there, but it's just a few ticks. Just make sure that they survive the last one. And I'm unsure if we even have seen personals come out. Probably going to come out later on.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the Warrior dip into D stance there. He's back, just swinging away, doing full damage at this point. But I am really happy with how the series did shake out. We actually did see Friends with Affixes not necessarily having a big mistake. And we kind of get to see Raider.io just actually how fast their time really is. Because Friends with Affixes went for pretty much the same strategies, had the same amount of deaths, but still, Raider.io is here right now by themselves on Melandris, just 15% about from closing this one out and being Europe's champion moving on to the semifinals.
Yeah, they got one last Maelstrom to survive there, and everyone going super low. We saw healer cooldowns definitely go out there just to make sure that everyone survives. We even saw a bop on the Druid Moonkin earlier just to be sure that he doesn't take any damage. That damage is physical, so a bop will completely negate that. And now 2%, 1%, 2% left to go. This is going to be Raider.io's game.
And they take the series 2-0 in a commanding performance. But I got to say, I am proud of Friends with Affixes. they are out of the tournament, but that is the game I wanted to see from them. That is the cleanest we have seen them look this tournament, and we saw just, this is a night and day team, but they just have so much potential, and I really hope this team stays together and continues to work on